best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s. And the cars back then were beautiful. And they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. Le Professeur Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Räikkönen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So, 16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
Good evening, how are we? You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott. Alongside me is the brilliant Rory Jennings. We've got a cracking few hours lined up for you. Of course, we're going to be discussing Crystal Palace this evening. What an absolute rollercoaster of a couple of days it's been for their fans. The ecstasy of winning their second trophy in 4 months after an entire history without winning any. And then the ruling today from CAS, which confirmed their demotion to the Conference League. So is the silver lining here that Palace are now surely one of the favourites to win the Conference League and guarantee themselves a second season in Europe, or is that just too soon to say? Of course, there is tons of transfer news to get through as well, including Jack Grealish's move to Everton. What can we expect from him this season? Can he play himself into Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad? And as well, Rory's Chelsea look to have stepped up big time this summer with their new strikers. João Pedro scored in every game he's played for the club so far. Liam Delap's bagged a couple in their pre-season friendlies. So I'll be getting Rory's take on how Chelsea should set up next season, their title hopes, and what it all means for Nicholas Jackson, who seems now to be completely surplus to requirements. All that and so much more. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Well, what's the story, Rory? How are you, mate?
Very well, very well. I'm feeling totally bereft of emotion regarding this Crystal Palace issue.
Okay,
I just think it's so out of order for them, and obviously, of course, this isn't an attack on Forest. It's almost not Forest's fault. But I just feel for Crystal Palace. I feel like they have been so harshly treated. They have been robbed. They have achieved something spectacular. They deserve to reap the rewards of that magnificent day at Wembley when they overcame Manchester City, Pep Guardiola, and they earned their place through sporting merit in the Europa League, and that has now been cruelly snatched away from them.
Yeah, look, this is Rory's reaction, of course, to the massive news today. If you've missed it, if your head's been in the sand, Crystal Palace lost their appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport and will play in the Conference League next season. Now, this was after a panel found that John Textor, the founder of Eagle Football Holdings, who had shares obviously in Crystal Palace and was a board member with decisive influence over Palace and Lyon at the time of UEFA's assessment date. The panel also dismissed the arguments by Palace that they received unfair treatment in comparison to Forest and Lyon. And so, of course, Crystal Palace find themselves in the Conference League despite having obviously won the FA Cup and their place in the Europa League. Do you think, Rory, that there's any sort of silver lining in the sense that the Conference League is clearly an even more winnable tournament, and that might be, there is still hope for them? They've still got European football, and there's maybe a positive spin for Palace fans.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I don't think there is a positive spin. I think some things are just bad news, and there is no silver lining to it. Crystal Palace being launched out of a trophy that they rightfully belong in, losing out on the status that comes with playing in the Europa League. Like the Conference League, yeah, of course they have a better chance of winning it because it's not such a glamorous trophy.
Yeah.
Of course they have a better chance of winning it because it's an easier trophy to win because there aren't such good teams in it and it isn't as prestigious. I just think that the whole thing has been a mess, and I'm so bored. I'm glad that it's over. I never ever want to talk about the Court of Arbitration for Sport. I never want to talk about John Textor. I never want to talk about the blind trust ever again. I'm so sick to the back teeth of it all. But I think that Crystal Palace, they should just be they've been so wronged here. I think it's so out of order. And do you know what? A lot of the time, Max, whenever I'm on talkSPORT or anywhere, people often accuse me of being biased and they think that it's always through the lens of whatever. I don't like Palace. I don't care about Crystal Palace. I've got no love for Crystal Palace whatsoever. But what they did on that day at Wembley, overcoming Manchester City, beating the current champions at the time, beating Pep Guardiola, Eberechi Eze dancing, scoring at Wembley, winning Crystal Palace, their first ever trophy, part of the glory of winning that trophy, part of the historic events of what Eberechi Eze did that day. It comes with it the added bonus of playing in the Europa League.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost diluted the achievement.
Yeah, it goes without saying it's absolutely devastating for Crystal Palace fans, and they find themselves in this situation, of course, through no fault of their own. Let's say now what Simon Jordan had to say this morning. He feels that Steve Parish is the only person that has himself to blame.
Well, the rule is very clear. It's been in existence for 17 years. It hasn't stopped other people from complying with it, has it? Man City have had a multi-club ownership. They get booted out of Europe for it. Everyone knew the rules. Palace didn't comply with it. He made the point, and despite the fact he was proffering an apology, he was not proffering an apology, really. He was telling you that he doesn't run Crystal Palace. Go look at the person that does run Crystal Palace, with all due respect. So nothing to do with my rancour with Parish. It's a fact. You cannot categorise this as Textor. As much as I think John has got many questions to ask, and be answering in other areas, they sold them their bloody shares. They took his money, they put it in their pockets, they funded their football club through COVID, and then they blame him for it because they didn't do the due diligence that complies with a rule that's 17 years old. And then they turn around and suggest that it's because they don't read their emails.
Really interesting stuff there from Simon. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because Simon Jordan has such an understanding and almost inherent comprehension of what goes on at the business level of football. He's approaching it from that angle. The angle that I approach it from is just sport. And Crystal Palace earned this. Obviously, there have been ramifications here for Nottingham Forest. Max, you often speak passionately about your beloved Forest. What do you make of this entire thing? Are you happy the way that it's all?
I think I think there is a sour taste, and particularly on social media, there's been a lot of sort of rivalry built up between Forest and Palace fans, and that's sort of partly the nature of football tribalism. But I do have a massive amount of sympathy, and I said from the very beginning that I hoped that Palace maintain their place in the Europa League because it's sort of they have deserved it. They went on an incredible run, and what Glasner's achieved for Crystal Palace is amazing, and I was delighted to see him win the Community Shield yesterday. I thought, even considering some of the criticism that the club's under for maybe not investing this summer and has that frustrated Glasner, you didn't see any of that. But having said that, I do think we need to get a few things straight, Rory, because in my mind, there has been an astonishing amount of misinformation or certainly misconceptions about Forest's role in all of this. Look, let's be clear, Rory. Let's call a spade a spade. Crystal Palace fans are sadly in this position not because of Nottingham Forest, but ultimately because of the failings of their own ownership. Crystal Palace would not have been in this situation whatsoever if it wasn't for what is, in my mind, a complete and utter carelessness from the top brass at the club. I mean, they climbed the mountain. They went on this astonishing FA Cup run. They beat Man City, sort of serial title winners of all teams, to win their first ever trophy, and they've been booted off the top of that mountain, Rory, because ultimately they didn't check their emails. Every single season, UEFA writes to clubs and asks club secretaries what is the most appropriate contact. Right? What's the most appropriate contact details for any correspondence between UEFA and the clubs? Palace have given this email, which has become a bit of a meme now, isn't it? info@Crystal Palace or whatever it was. And ultimately, they've missed this correspondence, which should have been acted on. And so I just think to suggest that somehow a letter from Nottingham Forest has swayed UEFA, a letter from a club that hasn't played European football in 30 years has swayed UEFA to change their mind. I think it's for the birds, mate.
But it's a clerical error, and they've paid for it on the pitch. If it is some sort of red tape, some sort of clerical error, something that's happened at boardroom level, then that's where the punishment should happen. Punishing the team, booting them out of the European competition that they should rightfully play in, is out of order. Punishing the fans who now don't get to go on the glamorous European tour that they were expecting to go on is also out of order. And I honestly believe that if this wasn't Crystal Palace, if this was a behemoth, somebody that UEFA wouldn't necessarily want to pick a fight with, somebody that UEFA perhaps would want specifically in their competition, I think that they would have made it work. I don't know if you saw a recent episode of The Overlap, but Jamie Carragher made this point and he made it brilliantly. When Liverpool won the European Cup, with Carragher at the helm, 2005, they actually didn't qualify for the Champions League the following year. There were no provisions to have Liverpool in the Champions League because there wasn't the automatic, the winner goes in. So Liverpool didn't qualify for the Champions League the year after winning it. But UEFA obviously found a way to put Carragher's Liverpool into it. They obviously found a way to fit them in simply because they're Liverpool. They're not going to extend that courtesy to Crystal Palace because, and I mean this in the way that they view it, because it's only Crystal Palace. Yeah. So they can make an example of them.
I totally understand Crystal Palace fans' frustration at the rules. I do. What I don't understand and what I think is totally misdirected and totally inaccurate is the criticism of Nottingham Forest that they've somehow elbowed their way into UEFA and into the Court of Arbitration for Sport to sway some sort of decision. Look, there's been a lot of talk about this letter that the club wrote to UEFA.
Grasses.
UEFA were obviously, Rory, and I can see on your face, they were fully aware of the situation. It wasn't brought to their attention because of a letter written by the club. Now, look, a lot has been said about the letter. It's my understanding this was not a request or an order for UEFA to demote Crystal Palace. If you believe that a letter from the club has meant that Forest have taken Palace's place in the Europa League, then I'm sorry, but there is nothing that can be done to save you from your conspiratorial delusion. It's my understanding that this letter was understandably a request for for the process, the legal process at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, for that to be speeded up. Because naturally, Forest have to look after their own interests. If you're in the Europa League, you get reportedly around 20 million extra money. That changes what you do in the transfer window. Yep. But there's also loads of logistical issues. There are different UEFA stadium regulations if you're in the Conference League to if you're in the Europa League, both of which are much more stringent than the Premier League. And so I think it's a totally normal thing, and it would be remiss of Forest to not do their due diligence and press UEFA to come to a speedy resolution.
Fine, so now the place is yours. Do you think you should take it?
Oh, of course, mate.
Why? You didn't earn it. It's not your place.
We've been through this before, mate. Are you seriously telling me that there should be a moral stance and that they refuse to play? Who then goes into it? Who then takes that place?
I think that if Nottingham Forest actually said this is wrong, this isn't correct for sporting integrity, it is incorrect for us to take a place that we didn't earn, we encourage UEFA to actually give this great place to Crystal Palace. Maybe they would give the place to the rightful owners, Crystal Palace.
Of course they wouldn't, because Crystal Palace have been found by UEFA and by the Court of Arbitration for Sport to have broken multi-club ownership rules. And so, ultimately, no, I think that Evangelos Marinakis should look after the interests of his football club. But the idea that he's forced this and pushed this through a letter is for the birds. It's completely nonsense. And I think that there's been a lot of misconceptions. The last thing is this, Rory. There's been this line doing the rounds today that Forest, quote, attached themselves to this case. It's completely untrue.
Right. That felt like more than a rumour, didn't it? That felt like...
Well, if you read the documents from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, Forest were named as respondents. So they were named by Crystal Palace as respondents in this case. So, of course, they are compelled to send a legal team there to represent the club. And so I do think there is, from a perspective of a Forest fan, I think that they've sort of been dragged through the mud here, and it's an easy scapegoat to absolve the top brass at Palace of any responsibility. But I can understand why Crystal Palace fans feel frustrated at their club, for the way this has been dealt with and for UEFA, because ultimately you've got multi-club ownership rules. Yeah. They're allowed, but when the clubs get good enough to compete against each other in a tournament, then all of a sudden it's off the
Just
chart.
a mess, isn't it?
So it is a bit of a mess.
Let's never, ever, let's confine the term blind trust to the ash heap of history. But it's just been a mess, and I'm glad it's over.
I just think, Rory, the way that the world is now, we're going to be hearing a lot of this sort of stuff because we're seeing this lawfare come into the game, and it's rife, isn't it? Right, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. 18 plus gambleaware.org. Next up, we're going to discuss how far we think Forest can go in the Europa League and how the fans are feeling after today's announcement. Good evening. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, alongside Rory Jennings. Of course, we've been giving our reaction to the huge breaking news today, the news that everybody's talking about in the footballing world and in the sporting world, I imagine, as well. Crystal Palace have lost their appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They will be playing Conference League football. Rory, a couple of really interesting texts here. This is from Matt, the Palace fan. He says, "Hey Max, hey Rory, great show. Steve Parish is kicking a can down the road. We need to accept our fate, stop being victims." He seems more interested in spending money on lawyers than players. Give Glasner what he wants. Don't overspend, but at least back him. And if he doesn't and Glasner goes, the moment a big club sacks a coach, Parish will be culpable. I mean, interesting to hear a sort of Crystal Palace fan with that perspective, isn't it? I mean, certainly for my mind, there has to be a level of accountability for the people at the top of the club that have been in charge of this massive oversight.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that to me is almost the formality that doesn't need saying because it's so guaranteed. Like, in terms of the punishment, I think it's out of order what's happened to Crystal Palace. I think the reason I think it's out of order is not because they've been punished. I feel like they deserve to be punished. They've just punished the wrong people. The people that have ultimately been punished.
The fans.
It's the fans and the players. Yeah. The two innocent parties here.
But that's the responsibility of an owner, isn't it? It's to make sure that the interests of the fans are met. And ultimately, they found themselves in a situation where they haven't had their ducks in a row like other clubs, like Forest did. And here they are, and the fans are the victims. And so, like Phil's saying, Matt, the Palace fan, understandably, there's some frustration towards the top brass and the hierarchy at Palace.
I just can't understand, though, how ultimately the people that are paying for this are the fans who've been kicked out and the players. There is absolutely no doubt that head should roll. Somebody has made a massive pig's ear of a terrible situation at Crystal Palace and has cost their team a huge amount of money, a huge amount of pride, a huge amount of potential prize money and whatever else. So no, it's a terrible situation. But I just feel like the target is the wrong thing. I don't have an issue with there being a target at Palace. It's just been totally aimed in the wrong direction.
Phil has got in touch, says UEFA have their rules. Forest abided by the rules. Palace didn't. If the fans and the players want to know whose fault it is, they only need to look at the people running the club. I mean, Mike's also got in touch, says, I agree with Rory. There's no silver lining for Crystal Palace. The club's made a catastrophic administrative mistake and they are paying for it. I just wonder if there's a world where looking back at the end of the season where Crystal Palace, under Oliver Glasner, who's won in Europe, who's already won them the FA Cup and the Community Shield against Manchester City and Liverpool, no mean feat. But they go on and win the Conference League, and this is just a distant memory, and it turns out to be something great for the development of the club.
You framed it in a great way. Shall I tell you a totally different framing of this?
Go on.
That in fact, Crystal Palace don't win the Conference League, and Nottingham Forest do win the Europa League. Can you imagine the...
Well, look, I said this to you last week when we were talking about European football. I always want English clubs to do well in Europe. And I think the context of being a Chelsea fan and a Forest fan is very different. We've not had European football for 30 years. You've been in it most of the last 20. And so I can understand why you don't. I personally want Palace to win the Conference League. I want English clubs to do well in Europe. But I do think it's going to be tougher for Forest. And let's get into that. I mean, obviously, it's good news for the club. Obviously, they are playing even bigger sides in a European tournament. They get more money for that. But it is going to be harder for us to win that, isn't it?
Yes, it will. But there is absolutely no mileage to the theory that it's better to be in a lesser competition. There is just nothing that I can rationalise here. I mean, it's the equivalent of saying that you're better off in the Championship because you can win it rather than the Premier League because you can't. And again, I just don't agree with the theory. I don't think there's any good news today for Crystal Palace. Like people want to frame it that way, and they say, well, Crystal Palace could well win the Conference League, and on some level, I agree with that. But the unravelling that could actually occur because they're not in the Europa League could be far more significant than even winning the Conference League. Like, what impact is the lack of money, the lack of Europa League football going to have on the future of Adam Wharton?
The only silver lining is the fact that Forest is that I think that Palace are in a more winnable tournament, and I'm just trying to think of a positive for Palace fans who, albeit had an amazing day yesterday, today has been an absolute stinker. Dave, the Palace fans, got in touch saying, Max, why did Forest send lawyers to the hearing and cross-question Steve Parish? Well, I don't know what happened within the court, but I know that Forest sent lawyers because they were named as respondents by Crystal Palace, and so of course they are compelled to send their own legal team there. That's exactly why they've done it. But we've been talking about the likelihood of winning European competitions for both Forest and Palace. Let's see what the odds are saying with Ladbrokes.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a free bet for the first 3 weeks of the Premier League. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Delighted to say, joining us now from Ladbrokes is Alex McAtee. Are you, Alex?
Yeah, very good, folks. Are we good?
Yeah, we're doing well, mate. We're just sort of working through sort of the reaction to this massive news regarding Crystal Palace. What are their odds on winning the Conference League and then for Forest in the Europa League next season? Now we know exactly where they're going to be for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to you both. It is still European football, isn't it? I suppose I said to a friend earlier, if you're a Palace fan, it's like your other half promising you a curry for tea and you get home from work and it's a microwavable one. It's not what you signed up for, but it is a curry.
To be honest,
nonetheless.
that's one of my guilty pleasures. Is like a cheap Tesco curry, or other supermarkets are available. But yeah, I take your point, Alex. You bang on.
Exactly. A lot of people are on beans on toast, and it is a curry nonetheless. But they're 6-1 to win the Conference League. For context, it'd have probably been about 25-1 for the Europa League.
There you go.
That's roughly what you'll get for Forest now, 22-1 for Forest to win the Europa League. So yeah, you've got to take the positives, particularly as a fan. There's not really a lot you can do. You're still seeing your team play in Europe. You're now in a competition. You're much more likely to win, and you play Nottingham Forest in a couple of weeks at home. I mean, what a tasty game that's going to be.
You're not wrong, mate.
Yeah, for Palace, 6-1 to win the Conference League, 28-1 to win the FA Cup again, 7-4 for a top half finish. It could still be a good season for them.
Yeah.
Well, it already is. Look at what they did yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah, no doubt. Alex, can I ask you your thoughts on the Championship? Any movement off the back of the opening weekend?
Yeah, slightly. I mean, look, there's still so long to go, but I mean, Ipswich have drifted a little. They're now 3-1 from 11-4. I thought they were poor on Friday. Maybe Birmingham just made them look poor, but they were just nowhere near as good as I expected them to be. Southampton are now 9-2 from 5-1. Just a little bit of money for them. Late drama for them, but a win's a win. Blues, Birmingham 13-2. Again, impressive on Friday. I just don't know if they can sustain. That was quite a high level of intensity. There's 45 more games. It was just a brutal welcome back to the Championship for them in the end, wasn't it? Conceding so late on. Leicester, I don't know whose price this, but they're 9-1 now after scraping past Sheffield Wednesday. That performance or result, I think, would concern me if I was a Leicester fan. But again, like Southampton, a win's a win. Bristol City are probably the standout performers of the weekend. They breezed past Sheffield United. They're 25-1 to win the league. I don't think they will, but the 5-2 on Bristol City for a top 6 finish is a price I'm not put off by. And I'm going to say it: West Brom 20-1 from 25-1 to win the league. Up the Baggies, come on.
There you go. Good luck to you, mate. I mean, look, I've loved the Championship being back. It's been nice to be back in the swing of domestic football. I did watch Wednesday at Leicester, of course, as a Forest fan. Hoping Wednesday did well, particularly with what's been going on in their club. But we are just a few days away from the blockbuster, the Premier League. It's back underway. What do the outrights look? And has anything changed in terms of Liverpool and their bit of a wobble against Palace yesterday, or are they still sort of far and away the favourites to win the league?
Yeah, they're still there. I mean, there's pennies in it between the top 3, and we said a few weeks ago, but it's so rare that we've got a 3-horse race. I think we're quite lucky as neutrals just to sit back and see it unfold. It's so often been City, Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Liverpool. All 3 of those sides are 72 or shorter, and I guess you have to look at the bigger picture with Liverpool. Yes, they lost yesterday, but they're 7-4 favourites. I think it's only fair they go into the season as favourites. They won so convincingly last year by 10 points. They've spent, over £250 million already this summer. They're going to take some beating, but Arsenal, well backed, 5-2. They've strengthened. Man City, I like the look of 7-2. Going into a season, Manchester City as 3rd favourites is unheard of these days. They were dreadful by their standards last season, but they only finished 3 points behind Arsenal, I think, in the end. So they're going to absolutely be there or thereabout. You've got Chelsea, 8-1 shots. Man United, an interesting one in the betting. They were 33-1 this time last week before Benjamin Sesko was announced. Now 22-1. So they've gone from having no chance to still having no chance. But 50-1 or bigger every other team. United, not for me. I don't know who's getting excited there to force them.
Yeah, I think most United fans wouldn't be putting their money on that, and fair play to them, because they might have improved this summer, but they're a long way away from that. Alex, absolute legend. Thank you so much for joining us. That was a look at the latest odds with Ladbrokes. 18+, gambleaware.org.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a free bet for the first 3 weeks of the Premier League. That's Ladisfaction. 18+, gambleaware.org.
You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Next up, we're going to focus on matters on the pitch as Crystal Palace beat Liverpool in the Community Shield.
when was the last time you saw someone score with a knuckleball free kick? We're going to take a look at why we're not seeing them anymore and explain a bit about how they work. The knuckleball peaked in the 2010s after that Ronaldo strike against Portsmouth in 2008 inspired academy players everywhere. Here's a young Mason Mount.
I tried to base my free kick on Ronaldo, hit the ball by the valve and it moves. So what do you do? Top corner.
Now, no ball is perfectly aerodynamic, so as it travels it creates ever-changing pockets of turbulent air, causing that unpredictable movement. Football's most prolific free-kick taker, Juninho Pernambucano, perfected the technique but didn't invent it. He was inspired by players from the 90s and even the 50s. So how do you do it? You have to hit the ball head-on with as short a contact time as possible so the ball doesn't spin. Hitting by the valve helps with that short contact time, as it's the hardest part of the football. So why don't we see knuckleballs much anymore? It's because players are being told not to shoot from dead ball situations because the XG is so low. In fact, as Opta shows here, since the 08-09 season there's been a 10% reduction in players shooting from free kicks in the Premier League. And in 23-24, a record low of 11 free kicks found the back of the net. And the knuckleball, though spectacular, is imprecise, which is why it's becoming a thing of the past.
Well, 5 of the last 8 Community Shields have been decided by penalty kicks, and this one is going the same way. Salah goes first for Liverpool in front of the Liverpool fans, and he blazes it over the top of the crossbar, gets right underneath it.
That's one of the worst, that's for sure. Quite a short run-up.
Young Justin Devaney of Northern Ireland, who was signed from Airdrieonians 2 years ago. He steps up, left-footed, drives the ball high into the net, and Crystal Palace celebrate. They win the Community Shield, and they just can't stop springing surprises. Mark Gay picks up the Community Shield, and he thrusts it into the sky, and the Palace uprising continues.
And Crystal Palace are becoming silverware machine.
Yeah, what an absolutely fantastic day for Crystal Palace. They go an entire history without winning any titles, and then 2 back-to-back at Wembley. An absolute belter of a day for the Palace faithful, and delighted to talk about that, and of course the news regarding the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Delighted to say Bruce Millington is with us, former Racing Post editor, lifelong Palace fan. Bruce, we'll talk how amazing this has been under Glasner and your trips to Wembley. It's astonishing stuff.
It really is. It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, a year is a short time in football. If you'd said a year ago that Scott McTominay was going to be on the Ballon d'Or shortlist and that Justin Devaney was going to have scored the winning penalty in the Charity Shield, I'm not sure which one would have shocked me more. But despite the news, which we will touch upon, I'm riding high. I'm buzzing. It's been it's been the best period in Crystal Palace's history. I keep reading that because we haven't signed Mbappe and Vinicius and various other players that we're in crisis, but long may this crisis continue. I'm enjoying it. It's been just a fabulous end of last season, start of this, and we go into it with a lot of optimism despite the controversy that was generated again today.
Can we have a chat about Oliver Glasner? Like, from the outside looking in, he truly looks like a genius. Perhaps one of the best managers in your history. How important is he to your ambitions moving forward?
I think he's crucial. I think he's a fantastic man manager. He's obviously great with the players. They released the video of his speech to the players after the victory yesterday, and it just felt so uplifting listening to him. It felt so sensible, so correct. He cares so much about them. He treats them brilliantly. He makes them feel great. He's a no-nonsense operator. He's very affable in front of camera, but he's no pushover. And I do think that he would be difficult to replace. I mean, he's come in and done fantastically. I mean, he's just given us an extra attacking dimension that we were lacking a little bit before. Roy was fantastic for us, but a bit pragmatic. But, you know, he's really, really done brilliant. And I think that what he's done is he's used the fantastic signings that Dougie Freedman and others brought to the club and moulded a great 11. And I say 11 because there isn't very little depth to this squad, and that's a concern as we go into the new campaign. But that 11, you've got to remember, yesterday was a game against a team very much in transition. I mean, it's very unusual for champions to come out first game of a new season so different. 2 new fullbacks, 2 new big money attackers. Palace were exactly the same 11 that won the FA Cup. So we are the same team that we were, but with a little bit more time under our belt, with more of Glasner's influence. I think if we can keep this team fit, I expect one departure. I think Gay will go. But if we can keep them fit and add to them in the key areas that we need to, I go into this season absolutely brimming with optimism.
I mean, it's great to hear you are optimistic, Bruce. You mentioned Mark Gahey there. I thought it was interesting that Steve Parish, after the game, almost admitted that they might have to reluctantly sell him. And you think about, I thought Parish deserved a lot of praise last season for ultimately saying no to several approaches for Newcastle and keeping Mark Gahey, obviously, who has been instrumental for you in this historic season. But is there not a slight concern that if he goes and then there are questions over Eze and then the lack of Europa League football turning into Conference League football, are you concerned about the lack of movement and the development of a wider squad that you can draw on what's going to be a long season for you?
Do you know what? I always like a really solid, consistent squad. I think that if they're on a roll and they're going in the right direction, I think they can only get better. So for me, this summer was all about minimising departures. Obviously, there were areas we needed to strengthen. There's still a couple. But the fact is that Wharton is still with us and be under no illusion how good Adam Wharton is. He is absolutely different class. And Thomas Tuchel, he keeps picking the wrong Henderson. The Henderson he wants is Dean Henderson, because he's now a genuine challenger, I think, for top spot. Pickford's been fantastic. No one would begrudge that. But I think Henderson's really, really pushing him hard now. But honestly, if these squads come out for the next internationals and Wharton isn't in there and Jordan Henderson is, I mean, it throws into question basic principles of player judgment.
Yeah, meritocracy.
Exactly. But that's another story. With this, I mean, you're right about Parish. I've heard players issue "come and get me, please." This was a "come and get him" plea almost, because they don't want to lose him for nothing next summer. It's quite an interesting situation, this, because, people were bidding 60, 65, 70 for him last year. Now, Palace would probably take somewhere in the region of 35, 40. I'm amazed that I cannot think of a club that wouldn't want him. And I think ultimately, Rory, the injury to Colwill last week, I very much, if he's going to move, I think that they'll get the season opener between the clubs done next week. And I could very much see Gay going back to Chelsea, which would be sensational for Chelsea, very bad for Palace. Again, in the same way that Wharton, there's still some doubters. I still incredibly read people saying that Gay is overrated. He's absolutely not. He's England's best centre-back by far and one of the best centre-backs in the world. He's just brilliant. He's calm. His distribution's great. He brings it out. He's a great leader. He's brilliant in the dressing room. Yeah. He's a proper player and would strengthen Chelsea no end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Bruce. We're just going to change direction a touch here. Can I ask you your feelings on the cash ruling?
Do you know what? I mean, I don't know if it bores Max as a Forest fan. It bores me as a Palace fan. So, in a way, I'd rather I don't particularly like what's happened here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad it's done. And I heard the chap earlier saying we're 6-1 to win the Conference League. I mean, again, you guys both support clubs that are multiple European champions. We've never been in Europe. To be 6-1 to win a European trophy is very, very good. I'm delighted about it. I do think I'm torn on it, is the honest answer. Clearly, there's been some clerical oversights, naivety, call it what you like. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that had it been one of the giants of football, and the beneficiaries of this are Forest. It's not like we're getting booted out so Man United can take a place. So I don't think there's anything going on there with that. But somehow it does leave a slightly bitter taste, and you do feel that probably there would have been a way of fudging it had the club been slightly bigger. But equally, I can understand the situation. I can understand the ruling, and right now, in the same way that I don't care whether Isak joins Liverpool or stays at Newcastle because I'm so bored of it. I'm bored of this. And to be honest, we are where we are. We're FA Cup champions. We're going into a new season with the same squad as things stand, and we've got a European trophy to go for. It's a trophy Chelsea didn't mind winning last year. Olympiacos have won it. Roma have won it. West Ham have won it. It's not Mickey Mouse list of winners. Yes, there are a lot of unknown, little-known teams at this stage, but by the time we get to the knockout stage, it will be a proper European tournament, and I am absolutely delighted and buzzing for it, to the extent that today I thought I'm going to wipe away all the negativity and I booked 2 flights to Berlin on May the 27th in anticipation of getting a train down to Leipzig and watching us in the final.
Bruce, well said. And, you know, you've mentioned, like, Forrester, multiple European Cup winners. I'm 32. I wasn't there. I'm living off breadcrumbs of memories of my father and, you know, and his mates that sort of went through that and Forrest in Europe. So for me, one thing I'd say is, obviously, we were hoping for Champions League football for most of the season, and then it sort of capitulated towards the end of the season. And when we got Conference League, I was really happy with that, because from my perspective, I felt like this is a great position for the club to sort of, because we've almost outgrown ourselves just last season. We went from a relegation dogfight to being in the top 4 most of the season. So it felt to me like this is a really good place to sort of secure yourself as a top 10 team, to get European football, to go and win it, and then guarantee it the season after. And so I do think, and I hope that the vast majority of Palace fans feel what you're saying and reflect that sense of enthusiasm that, look, all the lawfare's out the window. We get to follow the Palace in Europe. What a joy that's going to be. And of course, there'll be a sour taste in your mouth. But ultimately, that's going to be an incredible experience for so many sort of generations of fans.
That's how I feel. I suspect I might be in a minority, Max, and I suspect that your hopes of sort of mutual love might be a little bit misguided. I think a new rivalry's been born.
Oh, without a doubt. No, I know. Yeah, I know that.
I'll tell you what, that's a shame as well, because I think Palace and Forest have the last few meetings, you know, the Forest fans are terrific. They've been really noisy, good laugh. And I think, you know, there's been a little bit of mutual respect there, but unfortunately that's all been wiped away, and it will be an extremely frosty boardroom it's Sunday week now, isn't it, when we play our place. And if Palace have gone out of Europe, 2 weeks since, if Palace have gone out of Europe before then it doesn't bear thinking about. But hopefully we will get through the qualifying round and both clubs will go on and enjoy the European adventure. I'm looking forward to football getting going again, and I think there's a lot to be hopeful for as a Palace fan. So I'm looking on the positives. Just going to enjoy the season.
Well said, mate. Bruce, absolute pleasure. Good luck with those qualifying games as well, and looking forward to that second game week of the season, that feisty rivalry that I'm sure will take place. Absolute pleasure to have you on, mate.
All the best, guys.
Yes. That is Bruce Millington, former Racing Post editor, lifelong Palace fan. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+, gambleaware.org. Next up, we're going to change tack, take a look at Jack Grealish as he's set to have his medical ahead of a loan move to the Toffees. Yeah, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. We'll be getting into the big transfer news of the day, but as the music suggests, the NFL returns to Wembley in October as the Los Angeles Rams take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and our competition to win VIP tickets is now open. That's right, we're giving you the chance to win 6 seats in a private box at Wembley Stadium, full hospitality plus $5,000. They're chucking away money with these competitions. I read a different one every show. How much money have we got? Right. Yeah, we're giving you the chance to win 6 seats. Here's how to enter. 18 plus UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for a chance to win. Text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 33338. All entries must be received by the 25th of August at 11 p.m. This is a TalkSPORT limited promotion run on TalkSPORT Talk Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. I don't really watch the NFL, Rory, I must admit, but I do quite like that motivational music.
You like
know what I mean? Yeah, it gets me revved up a little bit.
Yeah, I quite like the like you know what the American football is. You know, where they sing the anthem and they do the flyover and all that. Basically, I love it all. I love the circumstances of it all. I love it all apart from the game. I love the flyover. I love watching the American...
The walk-on stuff and the sort of song and dance around it. I don't mind a bit of Snoop Dogg at half-time and that. I quite like everything that goes around it. Half-time show at a World Cup, though?
No, of course not a World Cup. It's completely different culture. Like, you know, when people talk about the NFL and they go, oh, but it works at the NFL. I'm like, yeah, cool, of course it does. Because it's the NFL, it's completely different. When they try and, like, Americanise Premier League football, it gets my back up so much. Things that work in the States, they're great for the States. Yeah. I want them in the States. Yeah. Equally, things that work here, you don't need to, like, cross-pollinate like this. Yeah.
If you sort of put, like, a kiss cam at the City Ground or Stamford Bridge...
It'd be ridiculous.
It's just going to be weird,
isn't swearing at it.
Yeah,
just flick the V's at it. Yeah. No, do you know what? Do you remember? I think it was at one of the... It might have been when Liverpool lost the Champions League final in Kiev. Remember when Ramos fouled Salah? That one. Gareth Bale's bicycle kick. I forget the girl's name, but whoever it was that sung just got booed during the...
Is it Cabello? Camilla Cabello?
Yes, I've literally don't know who that is. That person could have sat opposite me on the tube on the way here. I don't know who that person is. But yes, it was. Yeah. And she couldn't believe it. She got booed and she couldn't understand it. You're like, nobody knows who you are.
I agree.
But let the atmosphere build naturally. You've got 25,000 Liverpool fans in the stadium who are ready to create an atmosphere. They're ready to, like, lend their voices and make something organic and brilliant. They don't need you whining on and prattling on about, I don't know, your ex-boyfriend or something.
Yeah, totally agree. Keep it out of our sport, I say. Right, we're heading to the big transfer news of the day because talkSPORT understands that Jack Grealish is set to undergo a medical ahead of a move to Everton. The Toffees have agreed a loan deal with Manchester City to sign the winger, and our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, joined White and Jordan this morning to break that news.
We understand that there's now an agreement in place between Everton and Manchester City for Jack Grealish to make that move to Goodison Park. It's been ramping up over the weekend. I reported yesterday that Grealish had given the green light to that move to link up with David Moyes. I don't have the finer details at the moment. I'd imagine it will be a loan deal initially. Manchester City wanted the bulk of, if not all, of Grealish's wages covered by Everton. And I think this is a significant signing for Everton. It's a risk, I think, for Grealish. Is this the right move to make and try and rejuvenate his career? It was pretty clear, wasn't it, at the end of last season that his days at Manchester City were numbered.
Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, there, giving us the very latest news regarding Jack Grealish. That season-long loan looks on the cards. Rory, what do you make of this move to Everton? Great club. But are you not surprised, perhaps, that after Spurs failed to get Morgan Gibbs-White, the injury to James Maddison, even Aston Villa, you know, maybe getting their sort of the prodigal son returning, are you surprised he's not gone to a Champions League club?
Yeah, look, I rate Jack Grealish so highly. I rate him so highly. I like him so much. I think he's a brilliant player. And I feel like I'm in a very small minority. I will always argue that it went well. I think that the transfer to Manchester City went well. People will always argue with me. People will constantly tell me that he was a flop. And I just don't see it that way. I think he achieved a true greatness. I think he was part of something historic. He was an integral part of that treble-winning season. He was virtually first name on the team sheet that year. You know, he was the one who started the Champions League final. He was, at various points that year, completely unplayable. And apart from last season went wrong. I think he only had 7 starts. You could certainly argue that last season, by the standards that Jack Grealish had set, you could argue that it went wrong, and you could argue that last season itself, in a vacuum, was a flop. But overall, I think that it was a successful transfer that has now come to a natural ending. The Everton signing has surprised me there for many reasons.
We'll get to that in a minute, but do you not think that he has been somewhat stifled? And this isn't to take away from his achievements or certainly Pep's achievements at Manchester City. I mean, he's arguably the greatest ever manager that's ever lived. There is an argument for that. But do you not think that perhaps his creativity has been stifled somewhat in the way that Pep played him?
Yeah, I think he's had to become a team player in the way that many players who play for Pep Guardiola have had to. And the Guardiola doesn't have any sentiment or romanticism about moving players on. He's moved Jack Grealish on here.
Yeah.
There is no love lost. He moved Zlatan Ibrahimovic on. He's done this kind of thing in the past. And yes, you're absolutely right. Jack Grealish has had to conform to a very particular model. But Pep Guardiola deserves credit. He deserves praise. Has he made him less of a maverick, perhaps?
Yeah.
But he made him a winner. He made him,
and in that
immortal.
treble-winning season,
he made him
was
immortal.
astonishing.
Yeah, Jack Grealish is. The way we talk about like the treble winners of Manchester United, David Beckham's role in that, David Beckham being robbed of a Ballon d'Or that year. Jack Grealish is Man City's version of that. It just doesn't come with the same glamour because Manchester City don't come with the same glamour. But Jack Grealish was integral to everything that happened that year.
So let's talk about his move to Everton. Do you think that, considering the context of Everton, maybe sort of disappointed with how things were last season, David Moyes steadied the ship. Do you think that this is the club for him to guarantee himself a spot in Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad, or do you believe that might hinder his chances of getting in the World Cup squad?
Jack Grealish is very fortunate in a way because the one place that he is after in a team is a position that is up for grabs. So, for example, if Jack Grealish was competing with Bukayo Saka for a place in the England team, he wouldn't be getting in, regardless of whatever form he could demonstrate. You aren't getting in the England team ahead of Saka. But Jack Grealish playing on the opposite wing, competing with the likes of Anthony Gordon, there is a world in which he could get ahead. Who's up for grabs there? Marcus Rashford, Anthony Gordon, Jack Grealish. Maybe he could make it happen. But I actually believe that Jack Grealish's best position is probably more central as a number 10. And I think that although I was slightly surprised that Jack Grealish has gone to Everton, I was slightly surprised in a way that David Moyes wanted Jack Grealish. Not because Grealish isn't a brilliant player, of course he is. But Jack Grealish doesn't really conform to the stereotype of what you associate with David Moyes signings.
What do you mean? Is that not an underestimation of, a bit like, for my mind, a lot of West Ham's did? I think they underestimated who David Moyes was and what he achieved. Is that not your own sort of stereotype of what a David Moyes side is? I mean, who wouldn't want Jack Grealish?
No, of course. This isn't at all a comment on the player that Jack Grealish is or the talent that he possesses. I think he's a masterful footballer and a really good geezer. I like him. If you just think about the players that David Moyes has signed over the years, the kind of player that he's wanted, he's the kind of player he's the kind of manager over the years that has tried to sort of elevate players, sign a Tim Cahill and make him brilliant at what he does, sign a Mikel Arteta and make him sort of brilliant at what he does.
He's got
doesn't
a job
really sign stars.
But arguably, he has got a job to reignite Jack Grealish, to help Jack Grealish reignite his own career. Because last season he hardly played. He wasn't brought on to try and draw level against Palace. That lad that they signed from River Plate who made his debut. Yeah. And so clearly, I would imagine that there is a little bit of a confidence issue with Jack Grealish purely because he's not played so often and he's fallen out of favour. And maybe David Moyes, that's part of his job.
They need to learn how to love football again. I think Jack Grealish needs to fall back in love with the game. And if you think about David Moyes' impact on a player like Lucas Paqueta, he did get the best out of him. He did make him brilliant, and he did actually make him a winner. So there is a world where that could happen for Jack Grealish. And to be totally frank with you, I hope it does, because Jack Grealish is a diamond and a brilliant player. Everton are a great old club, and the marrying up of the two, I feel like it almost guarantees just sometimes you sign a player and the tide rises. One player lands and everything changes. I mean, the obvious example would be, Eric Cantona going from Leeds United to Manchester United winning the league and never looking back. You get those kind of signings that change things. Ruud Gullit going into Chelsea, it changed things. I feel like Jack Grealish going into Everton, it's a big moment, and he is capable of doing something magnificent. Like Everton haven't won silverware since, Paul Rideout, 1995. He could... Look, I think Everton with Grealish, they immediately finish certainly top 10. Everton become a top 10 team because of Grealish. But I feel like if he could just do something magical in the cup, win Everton silverware, it could have like lasting ramifications. It could have the impact that you were talking about earlier with regards to Thomas Tuchel's selection.
And what a way that would be, by the way, to break in the Hill Dickinson Stadium, right? I mean, winning a trophy at Everton. And all I'll say about Jack Grealish is I just cannot wait to see him playing football regularly. I hope he stays fit. I hope he stays injury-free. And I'd love him to find form where he could be in that World Cup squad, because for me, a fit and firing Jack Grealish makes England capable of winning that elusive trophy. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Ben Jacobs will join us next to give us the very latest transfer news of the day. As Lewis Hamilton, now at Ferrari, dares to dream of a record 8th F1 world title, the Tifosi will be hoping the Brits can bring glory back to Italy. To many, Ferrari and Formula One are inseparable. They're the only team in the sport today to have competed in the first World Championship in 1950, are the most successful team in history, and have built some absolutely gorgeous cars. Their first driver's title was won in 1952 by Alberto Ascari. Considered one of F1's most dominant and best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s, and the cars back then were beautiful, and they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. Le Professeur Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Räikkönen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So,
16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
Good evening, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, alongside the brilliant Rory Jennings. Time now to look at the latest football action with Ladbrokes.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a free bet for the first 3 weeks of the Premier League. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Joining us now is our very own transfer reporter, Ben Jacobs. How you going, Ben?
Evening, guys. How are you? All good?
Yeah, all good. Very much. Thanks, mate. It's been a complicated day as a Nottingham Forest fan. Pleased to be able to move on now, talk about transfers, get into the new Premier League season. We've just been speaking about Jack Grealish, and we sort of covered that. But another, I guess, emerging line today has been around the future of Savinho at Manchester City. What's the latest in terms of Tottenham's interest in him, and is it likely?
Yeah, this one's really interesting because Manchester City's position is crystal clear that they don't want to sell. But the caveat to that is when a player like Cole Palmer did before he moved to Chelsea says to Pep Guardiola, I want a new opportunity, Manchester City become quite understanding at the right price. So essentially, it's going to take the player to say he wants Spurs. And my understanding is he's giving serious consideration to that move, which means that Manchester City's position of not for sale could shift slightly, even though at the moment club sources are adamant that the meetings were only historical. It's not active. They don't want to sell. And if their mind was to be changed with player buy-in in favour of Spurs, they'd be looking for well in excess of £50 million. So it's complicated, but my feeling is that Tottenham are really going to make a push in the next few weeks, and this deal is still on. And of course, if Savinho departs, then Manchester City's window may not be done, especially if James McAtee also, as now is expected, joins your very own Nottingham Forest.
Well, yeah, can you give us the latest on that? Because, of course, you know, it feels like this would be the sort of signing for Forest that would really make fans feel that we have really moved forward in this summer window. Losing Elanga was devastating. It felt like we were going to lose Morgan Gibbs-White, which would have been like the soul of the club taken out. We've kept him, and now getting McAtee feels like that's a real step forward. Is this close? Are we expecting something quite soon?
Yeah, I think it is close, and it's going to be fascinating because Manchester City's perspective on James McAtee is if you compare him like for like before Palmer was at Chelsea, he's got more Premier League experience, he's got stronger numbers, and as a consequence, Manchester City were originally looking at the Cole Palmer fee, which was a total package of 42.5 million, and saying McAtee needs to be in that ballpark. But it looks like Nottingham Forest have been able to drive the price down. And I think the fact at Crystal Palace expense that they've now got Europa League football, barring some kind of other legal challenge, will also help their cause as well. So I'm told McAtee's ready to leave Manchester City, and a bit like Savinho, club's preference is to keep him as a squad player. They think that's best for his development. But if, like Cole Palmer, he speaks to Pep Guardiola face-to-face and says now's the time to go, then I don't think Manchester City will stand in his way. So whereas Savinho is a bit more complicated because Tottenham may need to put more money on the table than they're willing to at the moment, I think Forest and Man City are in advanced talks and they're not far off. And I'm told James McAtee wants the move.
Ben, I'm sorry to ask this question. I feel like you've been going round and round the houses with regard to this one, but I have to ask, any update on the Alexander Isak to Liverpool from Newcastle situation?
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, where all parties want clarity really soon. We get asked it every day. There's not always a significant update. The two things I think we can say at the moment are, number one, and maybe most importantly, Alexander Isak will not sign a new Newcastle United deal unless Liverpool, and I stress Liverpool, not Newcastle, tell him it's over for this summer. And then the second thing is it's still those both extremes where it's new deal, whether during the window or after it, or alternatively an exit. And this is why the saga's not over. If we go back to May, Newcastle felt like 3 years on the contract, well compensated, Champions League football meant there was a third option of just keeping him at the club. And ultimately, even if it was on his existing terms, that would be okay. Now I'm told on the Isak and within Newcastle, the belief is that is an untenable option. So they're either going to have to find a way to sell him at their price or alternatively get Isak to extend. And at the moment, Isak is not thinking about an extension. He's still thinking about Liverpool. And I suspect we'll get clarity before that Premier League fixture between Liverpool and Newcastle United. Of course, it could run the whole window, but I think all parties want to resolve it before then because it's overshadowing Newcastle's season. They're already looking for replacements. And can you imagine the drama and the headlines if it's still unresolved when they head into that game, Newcastle against Liverpool? So there's almost a mini deadline. Get it resolved in the next week, one way or the other, which requires either Liverpool and Newcastle to both tell Isak he's going nowhere, or alternatively, make that second bid. And then I think if Liverpool bid, it will be with confidence and it will actually be negotiated and sorted very quickly in that scenario.
Ben, we saw after the Community Shield, sort of Virgil van Dijk suggest strongly that they need more strengthening up top, which might sound crazy considering McAtee, Virch, you've already got salaries, extended his contract. And I just wonder, sort of from your understanding, do you think that comments like that from incredibly influential players in the club, do you think that in any way sharpens the mind of the owners? Do you think that that's intentional from Van Dijk? Do you think he's almost saying, go and get Isak, we need him? Or do you think it's just sort of a comment that we shouldn't read too much into?
I mean, obviously he didn't initiate the question, but by the same token, it's Virgil van Dijk. But I'll let you into a little secret. When Virgil van Dijk was negotiating his Liverpool contract and arguably had even more leverage in terms of his say over recruitment, it was Virgil van Dijk, believe it or not, that put forwards Kevin De Bruyne. And nobody within Liverpool's recruitment team moved or did anything about it, simply because of the fact that it is only Virgil van Dijk and Liverpool make their decisions collaboratively using data. And I think they don't really involve players in the who do you want. However, naturally, they are part of the pitch after they've established a target. But what's clear is, regardless of what Virgil van Dijk thinks, Mark Gay's possibility, providing two things happen. The first is the player accepts he may not quite get the same minutes compared to Crystal Palace in a World Cup year because Ibrahima Konate is there along with Van Dijk. And then the second thing is Palace's price would have to drop and likely significantly south of 40 million, which is kind of the ballpark where it's at. Palace want to sell, but from Gay's point of view, he is prepared to see out his contract, play every week, play in the World Cup, leave on a free transfer, have the pick of his clubs. And then there are other Liverpool targets as well. Giovanni Leone is the one I keep hearing, a much younger 18-year-old centre-back from Parma. There's also Charlie Cresswell, who they've scouted and discussed internally, former Leeds defender, now at Toulouse. So Gay might become a market opportunity, in which case we should keep an eye on Liverpool because they will almost certainly add a defender between now and the end of the window. But if it isn't to be Gay, keep an eye on teenagers or players in their very early 20s, because actually, Gay aside, they've been looking at a slightly younger kind of profile, knowing that if Konate and Van Dijk are fit, that may well be the pairing.
Ben, I am really optimistic when I ask this question, but is there any chance that you can see a world where Chelsea signed Donnarumma?
I mean, you can never say never with Chelsea because they headed into the window and the feeling was they were going to stick with their existing goalkeepers and rank them. And then the Mike Maignan approach came out of nowhere. So it's a window. Chelsea are opportunistic. They're going to be busy with incomings and outgoings right until the final minutes of the window. But as of now, Chelsea sources are very much backing Robert Sanchez and distancing themselves from Donnarumma. I never say never with Chelsea. Even with João Pedro in May, they didn't want to bid because they thought, we're okay, we want a different kind of profile, we're going to get Liam Delap. And then once Newcastle sort of got going, a month later, they thought, hang on a minute, Nicholas Jackson might leave. maybe we do need this player. So there's always that possibility of moving parts. But I think Manchester United are going to be one to watch in particular. Sources had always downplayed their talks with Donnarumma as well. But what I know at the moment is two things on Donnarumma. The first is that he's been excluded from the UEFA Super Cup squad against Spurs, which is a clear message from PSG. They want to sell now. And then the second point is that Donnarumma is open to a Premier League opportunity. And I think we'll have more in the next few days because there'll be a lot of speculation tonight. My understanding is that Donnarumma may even say something in the coming days, and then we'll have a clearer indication of what he's thinking. But Lucas Chevalier, new young goalkeeper at PSG, is the number one, which means if Donnarumma runs down his contract and leaves in a year's time, then he'll only be a number two. And knowing that, I think it will suit all parties for an exit now. So keep an eye broadly on Premier League clubs and Donnarumma, because I think we're going to get some movement in the coming days.
I mean, I find that mad, Rory. I mean, he was so good. I don't watch the French league, but he was so good in the Champions League.
No, he's a wonderful goalkeeper. And if you think about the impact that he would have on Chelsea this season, look, I don't think that we're going to win the league. But I think with Donnarumma coming in, I think that it would elevate our squad. I think it would elevate our chances. And it would make us genuine contenders. The reason why Chelsea aren't going to win the league at the moment is because of the Achilles heel that we have in goal. If we suddenly signed a player like Donnarumma, who has done it at the very top, then I think that we would become contenders.
Yeah, no, I think he, we always use that phrase, don't we, needle mover. I think he massively would be. I'm so surprised that PSG are willing to let him go. Finally, Ben, I feel for Bournemouth. I mean, they've got an amazing manager, and I'm sure that you look at their recruitment and they're just sort of wizards with the data. So I'm not sort of condemning Bournemouth. I mean, they always beat my Forest, so I certainly can't say that. But Zabarnyi, he seems like he's on his way to PSG. Does it look like, will they replace him? They seem to be making a lot of money in this window. What's the latest at Bournemouth?
Yeah, I think from Bournemouth's point of view, it's been a difficult summer, and yet their PSR position was such that they needed some sales. So Dean Howson went, and now we know that Ilya Zabarnyi is on his way as well. And in that, you remove a pairing at the back. So there will have to be some movement in the market. What we should say is that people are talking about exits, but don't forget the French centre-back Bafodé Diakate has already come in from Lille. It's not been officially announced, but there's basically an agreement in principle there for something in the region of £35 million. And I think Bournemouth haven't sanctioned the Zabarnyi sale without knowing somebody is coming in the form of Diakate, but maybe one more defender as well. They've been able to get a new deal out of Antoine Semenyo as well. So it isn't all doom and gloom. Justin Kluivert is still there too. And I think Bournemouth will do okay as a result. And this money is vital because Bill Foley told talkSPORT a few months ago that they would need some movement in the market. So it is worth noting that some of these exits are potentially in light of balancing the books as well. But just briefly, the Zabarnyi situation is that he's already in Paris. He's done his medical. That's passed. The agreement in principle is in place, 63 million euros plus add-ons, but there's just a few final points before he can formalise it, even though he's done and passed the medical, particularly, I'm told, around things like agent fees and the payment structure on the deal, even though they've agreed a fee. So this one is going to happen imminently, but it's sort of 99.9% done rather than 100% done, and that's why there's been no formal announcement yet.
Ben, absolute pleasure as always, keeping us up to date, all we need to know. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to Ben soon. That was all very much thanks to Ladbrokes 18+, gambleaware.org.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a free bet for the first 3 weeks of the Premier League. That's Ladisfaction. 18+, gambleaware.org.
You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Next up, we're discussing Chelsea's impressive pre-season games this weekend. Yeah, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT as Rory just gets out from under the desk. That break was quicker than we thought. But look, the NFL returns to Wembley in October as the Los Angeles Rams take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And our competition to win VIP tickets is now open. That's right, we're giving you the chance to win 6 seats in a private box at Wembley Stadium with full hospitality plus $5,000 spending money. Here's how to enter. 18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word CASH to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 338. All entries must be received by the 25th of August at 11 p.m. This is a talkSPORT Limited promotion run on talkSPORT Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. You back with us, Rory, mate?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to find a plug socket.
Yeah, well, in this new studio, it's sort of camouflaged, isn't it?
It's very unforgiving as well, because the cameras were upon us and I didn't quite realise. And then I just crawling out from under the desk.
Yeah, thankfully, I looked at the screen, saw we were on. Look, let's talk about your Chelsea, Rory, because it seems to me, and I don't have any sort of bones saying this, it seems like Chelsea are sort of riding the crest of a wave at the minute. Nobody would have expected them to win the Club World Cup, especially against PSG, who looked like for a time they were on a totally another level. And, you know, you've got João Pedro, who's come in, by the way, scored every single game he's played. And granted, I think that's only 4 games, semi-final, final of the Club World Cup, and then 2 friendlies. You've beaten PSG, I think, was it 4-1, and then Bayer Leverkusen 2-0. I mean, these aren't, you know, they're no mugs, are they? They're proper teams. And then you've got Liam Delap, who's also been scoring some goals, different type of striker. You know, my question to you and for Chelsea fans is, how do you want and how do you think Chelsea are going to incorporate those 2 new signings?
Oh, I think we can make it work. I think that
both starting.
Well, sometimes this is the beauty of signing players like this. Like, we've signed João Pedro, who is clearly capable of playing instead of Liam Delap, but also alongside Liam Delap. You sign Liam Delap, who's capable of playing instead of João Pedro, but also alongside him.
But I can't imagine. I would say João Pedro is going to be your main striker, surely.
I think João Pedro will probably take the majority of the burden, but I also see a world where João Pedro will potentially play slightly wider, slightly deeper, allow Liam Delap to play as the front man and play off him, allow Liam Delap to play with his back to goal, bring others into play. And Liam Delap's excellent, you know, playing on the last shoulder, running the channel. I think that he is a brilliant signing, like a no-brainer. He scored 12 goals for Ipswich, 10 of them from open play. You know, it's a really obvious signing for 30 million quid, and we have behaved excellently in this window. Like, we've signed players that we needed. We've signed players in quite an aspirational way, and I say this loosely. I don't think that we are going to win the league, but I feel like we are capable of competing for the league. I feel like we are capable of accruing a points tally that is respectable and a points tally that is capable of winning the league. The difference is, whilst we've got massively stronger this year, so this time last year, Max, you would have been sitting here and you would have gone, Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United, Newcastle United, Aston Villa are all very much comparable sides, all very much in the same cluster, hoping for Champions League qualification. What has definitely happened is we've pulled away from that lot. We're no longer part of the Aston Villa, Newcastle United conversation. Whether we are now good enough to be part of the Liverpool-Arsenal conversation is perhaps one for you rather than for me.
Well, on you sort of bridging that gap and moving towards the sort of Arsenals of the league, you know, we've spoken on a lot of shows about Enzo Maresca, and you've never particularly been sort of astounded by him and captivated by him, but surely you have to give him some credit, and not that you aren't, but you've got to give him credit for the improvement, for dealing with this young side that has sort of been through quite a lot of turmoil at the club. Things seem to have calmed down this season, or last season. You know, do you think that he is the man capable of taking you to the next step?
Yeah, of course. It's impossible to say no now. He's won 2 trophies.
So he's won your heart.
He hasn't won my heart. I'm still slightly cynical. But it's impossible to have a major issue with him. Look, I can remember vividly losing at Portman Road last year, going on that pitiful run over Christmas. You know, almost opting out of a title race, sacrificing any privilege that we had in the league table. But equally, what he has done, particularly since then, you think about the way that we qualified for the Champions League, going to Nottingham Forest, winning, picking up the points where we desperately needed them, then going to Poland, winning European silverware. Okay, fairly lightweight European silverware, but silverware nonetheless. But then going to the United States, then lifting the Club World Cup in New York City, I think is prestigious. And I think that what can happen is, and this is what we should be doing, when you win silverware in this way, you need to use it as a springboard. Yeah. Whether or not it's your natural progression, whether it's your natural trajectory, when you win silverware, suddenly things change. And you have to now use the momentum that comes with it, use the feel-good feeling that comes with it, and launch a serious and sustained bid to win the league. You spoke about the character that they showed when, beating Forest on that last day of the season in what was a Champions League playoff. Levi Colwill scored, which I think was sort of redemption for him because he scored an own goal for Huddersfield against Forest in that playoff final a few years ago. Obviously, devastating news for him, for the club, that this emerging, England international young defender has had this ACL injury and looks to miss the rest of next season. Obviously, look, devastating for him, but even though you have 78 other centre-backs available at the club, I'm presuming that you're going to tell me you think you need to spend 60 million on another one. I think there's potential that we do, and you are correct to rather cynically put it that way. And I think you're right to put it. I'm being genuine. I think you are right to put it that way. We have signed an awful lot of players, a ludicrous amount. It's almost gluttonous what we've done. But to be totally frank, loads of them are terrible. Loads of them are not good enough. So it's all very well for you to go, but you've already signed Benoit Badiashile. Yeah, fine. Benoit Badiashile wouldn't have got into the Chelsea team in 1994.
So why was he signed?
Like Erland Johnson, Jakob Jelberg. They were better players than Benoit Badiashile. So, yeah, you're right. We do have other players. Axel Disasi. Axel Disasi is one of the worst footballers. Again, I would say David Lee. David Lee was a better player in the 1994 team than Axel Disasi ever was.
I was 1 year old, so I don't know.
No, but I'm sure you do. It was the FA Cup final. It was just an example of an era when Chelsea went 25 years without a trophy. We got to the FA Cup final and got beat, and that was as good as it was.
I guess the point I'm getting at, mate, and I mean this genuinely, is does that not create a little bit of a lack of confidence in your recruitment because you can get it right so often, and this isn't a sweeping statement.
It right so often.
Well, you look at Cole Palmer.
I'd say there's about 3 examples of us getting it right, and 30 examples.
Is there a lack of? You've got this Jarell Hato, who's come from the Eredivisie, and granted, he's got great stock, great pedigree, played a load of games for such a young player. But could in a couple of years, could you not be talking about Hato in the same vein that you've spoken about Badiashile?
Yes, of course. No, sorry. You said, do you have any confidence, or you even put it? Maybe you don't have any confidence in the sporting directors or the Chelsea recruitment strategy. I absolutely do not. We signed 50 players under Clearlake. 50. Of those 50, I would say that you could say Pedro Neto, Enzo Fernandez have been good. Mm-hmm. Moises Caicedo has been excellent. Cole Palmer has been a dream come true. And the rest are basically not good enough.
But maybe there's an argument that you're beginning a little bit like Forest, signed 45 players in 2 years and have sort of honed that, brought in Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, game changed, brought in Murillo and Milenkovic, totally different story. Maybe you're at the part of your sort of, scattergun approach where you're starting to hone in, because you look at Esteval, looks like a real talent. I think Liam Delap and João Pedro, really good early signs.
Agreed, but then you cast it back to when they first came in and they were signed, had no strategy at all. We signed Koulibaly. We signed Aubameyang. We signed Aubameyang for a manager that we then sacked. They played one game together. Tuchel was, Aubameyang came in to be reunited with Thomas Tuchel. They obviously had a glorious pre-existing relationship. He was then sacked straight after. There was no strategy. So no, I don't have any confidence in the ownership really, but I have to say that they've been getting it right of late. Whether that's luck, whether that's design, I don't know.
Where would Garnacho fall into that?
This is a disaster. I hate the idea. I think Garnacho, whatever you think of his talent, and I think that we could have a discussion around how good a footballer he is. But what we have to do is separate the footballer with the man. And as a man, I do not want him anywhere near Chelsea. As a footballer, I think he's a talented player.
What is it about his character that concerns you?
I hate him.
Hate's a strong word.
I hate it. I hate everything about him. I think the disrespect that he showed to Manchester United is appalling. I think the disrespect that he showed to the office of Manchester United manager, for example, whatever you think of Erik ten Hag, whatever you think of Erik ten Hag's ability as a manager, the Manchester United managerial office is one of the most sought after and prestigious offices in the world. In terms of the biggest jobs in world football, in the managerial sense, it's got to be top 5. And in that, I'm including the Brazil national manager. I'm literally the top 5 jobs. Erik ten Hag has got to the top 5 jobs in his career that is possible. And somebody like Alejandro Garnacho, in his young, tender age, is being sneery, being disrespectful. You then look at the way that he's turned his nose up at the institution that is Manchester United, wearing the Marcus Rashford shirt. I saw a picture of him today carrying a vape. I literally have no understanding, comprehension. I cannot believe that we are linked with him. In terms of him as a player, however, I find it very difficult to get behind everything that I've just said. But in terms of him as a player, maybe there is a world where he could do the business. I mean, we've seen him do some brilliant things, haven't we? I saw him play very well in an FA Cup final. I've seen him score big goals. Seen him score one of the most beautiful goals I've ever seen. I'd say it's the second best bicycle kick I think I've literally ever seen, after the Trevor Sinclair against Barnsley at Loftus Road, of course.
But the former of what you've said would suggest it's a conclusive
wasn't
no.
Wasn't his little brother like hanging Manchester United out to dry? You know, in Manchester United, in perhaps their lowest moment, imagine being a Manchester United fan in Bilbao, watching the great Manchester United lose to that Tottenham team, Ange Postecoglou, and then Alejandro Garnacho makes his post-match about him. Yeah. I mean, I cannot think of a reason why Chelsea should go for Garnacho, but we will, obviously.
There you have it. Conclusive from Rory Jennings. It's a no for Alejandro Garnacho. Right, you're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. 18 plus gambleaware.org. We'll be joined by the Stretford Paddock's Jay Motti next to chat Man United. Good evening, how are we? You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, alongside the fantastic Rory Jennings. We've been talking about Palace, we've covered all of that. We've been talking about Jack Grealish to Everton, Chelsea's chances with the absolute belter of a summer they've had. But we're turning our attention to Manchester United because crikey Moses, fair play to Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. For me, for my money, they have absolutely pulled it out the bag, and it's now balls in your court, Ruben Amorim, because they've signed some fantastic players. And I imagine there's a lot of anticipation and excitement from the Old Trafford faithful heading into this new season. And to talk us through that from the perspective of United, delighted to say that Jay Motti from the Stretford Paddock is joining us. How you going, Jay? You all right?
Yeah, good to chat to you, lads.
Yeah, mate, I'm looking forward to it. Now, look, just tell me overall. I've articulated how I think United have done this summer from the perspective of a Forest fan. From the horse's mouth, how excited are you? And do you feel that the relationship with Ineos, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, with Dave Brailsford, there was a lot of cynicism there, and understandably so. Do you think that the tide's turning because they have put their money where their mouth is and gone and bought some top players?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think you're right. I mean, some of the decisions that Ineos made were unpopular ones, and they didn't seem to make a lot of sense. You know, when you're talking about things like cutting Christmas bonuses and not putting on travel for the staff and a lot of the redundancies as well, to have one round of redundancies and then another round, it felt like, is this really how they should be going about the business at Manchester United? And there was a lot of frustration at that, and ticket prices as well. But in terms of the transfer window and the way they've gone about the business there, that will get a lot of people on side, and I can understand why, because as you've just said, they have put the money where their mouth is. I mean, Mercedes Cunha, you thought, okay, that felt like that deal was always going to get done, and it got done, announced on the opening day of the window. And Bumo dragged on a little bit, but I felt quietly confident that was going to happen. The Sesko one, though, is the one that I think really shook everyone up, because it was like we were linked with him, and then within a week he's a Manchester United player. And anyone that follows United know that doesn't happen. It usually gets dragged out for weeks, if not months. So that one to get done rather quickly, it's great, but it has made us a little bit greedy, because now there's talk of Carlos Baleba and everyone's going, well, you've gone in quite hard already. Are you going to go the whole hog and bring in a midfielder of that talent? So it's a double-edged sword. And you mentioned there about the pressure that's on Ruben Amorim. I think he was under pressure anyway. We just finished 15th, as Rory was mentioning earlier. We lost a final to Spurs, which is the lowest of the low. So he's going to be under pressure to perform this season. And I think bringing in the players we have done adds to that. But you're always going to be under pressure as Manchester United manager. And I think we've given him the tools that he needs. Call me greedy, but I would just love it if we could get a midfielder over the line as well.
Jay, I obviously follow you on social media, and I've been glued to your Instagram story as you've been like gallivanting across the states following Manchester United on all these pre-season tours. It felt like, from what I could see, you had quite a lot of access. You seemed to be sort of in and around what was going on with Manchester United. What sort of feeling did you get from the camp?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we've done it a few times, like you mentioned, and you can sort of gauge how everyone's feeling, and just from being around some of the players and the staff, and you can get the impression when maybe not everyone's feeling it, or there's just a little bit of pessimism. And it did feel like everyone is together. You guys were talking about Alejandro Garnacho earlier, and listen, I've stuck up for Garnacho many times, but I think it's right that he's going to get moved on. Jadon Sancho wasn't there in pre-season this time. Marcus Rashford's obviously already moved on. I think that helps when you've got players that you know are not part of the manager's plans, who are not in the camp, because last pre-season, we did have some of these players around, and it doesn't help. So I do feel like there's a bit of optimism. Plus, you had Brian Mbeumo joined up with the squad, of course, was training, then played in that final game. I think it was against Everton. So yeah, there was a lot of positivity there, and you sort of sense that. I know we've been here before as Manchester United fans, and I've been here before, going into a new season with a bit of optimism. But it did feel a little bit different this time round. It did feel like there was a real cause for optimism rather than just sort of blind faith.
Yeah. You've mentioned, Jay, Carlos Baleba there, and how I totally understand what you're saying. I feel the way that the club went about getting Sesko, it almost totally raises your expectation, because, of course, you know how big a club you are, but you're sort of seeing the reality before your eyes. It's like, despite the fact we've had such a terrible time in our recent history, anyway, in our club's history, we've still got that draw, and we've still got that sort of financial might to go and do the business. And that, as a result, has given you an even greater appetite for Baleba. On that, what do you think the future of Kobbie Mainoo looks like? Because I can't help but think that you've already got an absolutely stunning young player, and I know they're different profiles. Are you worried about that he maybe might fall by the wayside under Amorim because he maybe doesn't sort of work the way that Amorim wants him to?
That is a worry for me, but I actually think that Carlos Baleba coming into this side could be a positive for Kobbie Mainoo. I think if you had Kobbie Mainoo and Carlos Baleba, you've got a midfield for the next decade. Because I think Kobbie Mainoo is a fantastic footballer. I think part of the problem with Mainoo is he had such an impressive first season where he came in, literally his debut was man of the match. He was player of the match in the game that Alejandro Garnacho scored the Puskas award-winning goal. It was just like, that's how impressive he was. Then by the end of the season, he's player of the match in the FA Cup final and scores the decisive goal. By the end of summer, he's playing for England in the Euros final, and he's a teenager, and it's all this expectation that always the answer to all Manchester United's problems now, and he's going to save us. Then he has an injury hit season, and already people are like, well, he's not good enough, he's flattered to deceive, and all this other nonsense. Kobbie Mainoo is unreal, and I think the one thing he's probably lacking is he's not probably as fast as other players. He's not as box-to-box as perhaps Carlos Baleba could be. I think you put someone like Carlos Baleba next to Kobbie Mainoo, that is a perfect match for me. I think that works superbly. And the fact that they're both very young, United could look at it and go, OK, Kobbie Mainoo, maybe for the time being, he doesn't start every game, he's rotated a little bit. He's still only 20 years old. That's not the end of the world. But longer term, I mean, Bruno Fernandes, I think, he's 30-odd. You look at Casemiro, what is he, 33? I mean, who else is going to fit in that role? Ugarte, he's not quite done what he should have done at Manchester United. I'm not saying it's, given up on him. But there's every reason to think, long term, that's your solution. So rather than selling Kobbie Mainoo and then in 5 years trying to buy him back from Brighton for 150 million, keep him, nurture him, and then eventually you could have one of the best midfields in the Premier League.
So, Jay, all things considered, you've only got 38 games next season in the Premier League to worry about. No European distraction. You've had a window that looks like it ticks a lot of your boxes. You only scored 44 goals in the Premier League last season. You've now signed loads of goals. It's looking good. What's the expectation or optimistic outlook for Manchester United next season?
I think it's got to be optimistic, and we've got to be a higher expectation with the players we've brought in, as you said. But we have to have a little bit of realism as well in the fact that we have just finished 15th. You can't just pretend that that's it now. It's a title challenge. For me personally, I can only speak for myself. I think we have to be getting European football next season. Now that might seem like a bit of a low bar to a lot of people. You're going, what, have we finished 6th or 7th? That's good enough. But I think that's sort of the bare minimum. But if we can have a bit of luck with injuries, because with injuries last season, it didn't quite go the way we were hoping for, because we lost some key players at important times. You look at when Ahmad was flying, then he gets injured. Martinez is flying, then he gets injured. If we can have a little bit more rub the green with injuries, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that United are challenging for those top 4 spots. I really don't. And I think when you get into the business end of the season and play teams like Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle and City have Champions League football to play week in, week out, and Spurs do as well, and we don't have any European football, then that could be the time that Manchester United can use that to their advantage and maybe get into that conversation for Champions League football, because you've seen it and you've said it already. We can still attract top draw players without Champions League football. We get Champions League football, the revenue that can bring in, and the fact that Manchester United and the prospects of playing for Manchester United in the Champions League, then who knows what we could do next summer.
The only thing that makes me struggle to believe that, Jay, it's not what you've got going forward. You've clearly got an absolutely ton of goals. You've added to Bruno Fernandes, who's still managed to be one of the best players in the Premier League, despite playing for one of the worst Manchester United teams we've ever seen. So I don't doubt that you're going to score goals. I guess I'd be slightly concerned about the lack of reinforcements sort of in that spine, particularly at the back in terms of your goalkeeper and your centre-backs. Look, I know that Lenny Yoro looks like a top-class player. He's still young. I think Aidan Heaven is an absolute steal as well. But are you concerned maybe about leaking goals more than you are scoring goals?
My biggest concern is the midfield, to be honest with you. I don't think... If Baleba comes in, I'm going to go insane. But without him... we still don't seem to have the right combination that quite works. The back three, I think, if you look at the options, we've actually got quite a few good options there. The problem we had last season is everyone got injured all at once. So that at one point you had De Ligt, Martinez, Yoro, and even Heaven injured. Like 4 of you, 3 centre-backs. I think Harry Maguire was having to do it all his own. He had Victor Lindelof and Tyler Fredrickson coming in. But I think if you look at actually who we've got as an option at centre-back, you've got De Ligt, you've got Martinez, you've got Yoro, you've got Heaven, you've got Maguire. They're all good players. They're players that can do a job. So again, it goes back to the injuries. Even if we just lost 2 centre backs, I think we've still got some good options. It's that midfield, and I'll be honest with you as well, the goalkeeper is a bit of a problem. It is, and he's been patchy. If he does well and if he shows the sort of form he showed in the Champions League when he was at Inter, where we saw what a great goalkeeper he can be, then that's okay. But if we see the Andre Onana that we saw in certain games last season, then there's nowhere to hide there. You're in trouble, because as much as I like Elton Bayern, he's not really taking up the mantle.
Well, Donnarumma's on the market, we're just hearing. So, I mean, how good would that be?
That'd be, can we dream? If we get Carlos Baleba and Gianluigi Donnarumma, then I will be saying some silly things on here. But we haven't got either of them yet, so we have to look at who we've got, and that is a bit of an issue. But yeah, I just hope Onana can kick on. It'll be his third season. He has shown some good games. He's not just been terrible ever since he arrived. No. He's just very, very erratic. So we'll wait and see. It might be a case of in January you look at it and go, look, we're going to have to go into the market for a goalkeeper if we are going to get into those top 4 spots.
Yeah, look, Jay, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I love the passion from you. I know it was there before, but I feel like there's an extra spring in your step, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the best time of the season for me before it starts.
It's that moment when you can dream, isn't it? Yeah. We'll speak to you again in 3 weeks. Normal service will be resumed, no doubt.
Exactly.
Jay, absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll speak to you soon. That is Jay Motti from the Stretford Paddock podcast. God, he's excited, isn't he?
Yeah. But this is that period of the season, though, isn't it? This is that period where it's a great period because we can all dream. We're all allowed to believe. We're all allowed to say, okay, it's unlikely, but this is a very particular time of the season where basically everybody can be optimistic. You've got Burnley fans telling us that they'll survive. You've got Man United fans telling us that they can make it into the Champions League. You've got Man City fans telling us that they can win the league. Arsenal fans actually believe they can win something. Like, it's a very weird time of the season.
They haven't got the easiest opening games of the season, though. I mean, they've got Arsenal, at Old Trafford.
Let's speak to Jay after.
And they've got City.
Gyökeres doing that mad celebration.
And Chelsea in their first 5 games. That is going to be tough for them. But look, I understand the enthusiasm from Man United fans. And, dare I say it, fair play, because it has been a tough old time for United. Right, this is Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, and Rory Jennings. Next up is our favourite feature, Rumour Has It.
People are basically just saying like, yeah, I'm gonna knock him out.
Moses Itauma can take him out right now.
And like, I probably would.
Everyone tells me that he is the future.
This kid is going to be the next face of British boxing.
I've said this from the beginning, from when he was 18, 19. He's it. He is it.
Moses Utelma!
I keep proving people wrong, and it's kind of weird. I'm going to have to prove them right this time.
There's no way the fight should continue. Moses Utelma!
Ready to dust up and have it. This fight here, make or break.
Let's go! I'm ready!
Yeah, this Saturday, talkSPORT brings you live commentary of the huge heavyweight clash between rising star Moses Utelma and Dillian Whyte in Saudi Arabia. Our top team are going to be out in Riyadh, bringing you all the action from a busy fight week before taking you closer to the action than anywhere else with our ringside coverage and a live watch-along. That's Moses Utelma, Dillian Whyte, this Saturday on the talkSPORT network and talkSPORT Boxing YouTube channel. Let me tell you, for my 2 pence worth, I don't know much about boxing, but Moses Utelma, he's going to go right to the very top. Right, it's time now for our favourite feature, Rumour Has It. Rumour has it. Delighted to say we are joined now by our very own Arsenal expert, talkSPORT's Luke Henry. Are you relieved now Gyökeres finally bagged the goal?
That's so generous, mate. Expert.
Well, you are, mate. Your tactical understanding of what goes on at Arsenal is so good it baffles me.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That's really kind of you.
But so are you relieved? Gyökeres, he got quite quiet in the noise a little bit. There's so much chat around him. It must be sort of.
Oh, I watched the game on Saturday and I was very, very happy. Just saw some things about having a natural-minded profile of a number 9. The fact that he was occupying defenders, which meant that Bukayo Saka had more space on one-on-ones, which was a sight to behold.
Yeah.
Even got the best out of Gabriel Martinelli, because I know a few Arsenal fans have had their opinions of him. But he does like to drift out to the left, Gyökeres, which allowed Martinelli to have more of a central roam. And we looked very good with Subamendi in midfield. He's very, very good. I've got to say, by the way, our new centre-half in Christian Mosquera for £13 million. I can understand why Valencia was so annoyed to let him go, because he looks a real good buy. Still need one more piece, though, so we'll see what happens.
Shall I tell you what I like, though, just before we move on? What I did love about that goal from Arsenal is it just felt a bit more direct. Like route one, crossing a box, bang, it's in the goal. And I think that's what Arsenal sort of need to unlock that sort of extra edge to try to sort of come close to Liverpool. That's what I'd say.
And the thing is, I touch on that with the second goal, because the second goal was the Arsenal that we all love to see, the quick flow and direct passing Martinelli, Odegaard over the top to Martinelli, to Saka 2-0. It was lovely. And it was nice to see that free-flowing football.
Happy days. Right, little Arsenal chat. But this is our favourite feature, Rumour Has It, where me and Rory will be read out some transfer rumours. We'll decide whether we think it's a good move for the player and the club. Luke joins us. Luke, to give us the first rumour.
We spoke about Victor Gyökeres as a striker.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another striker. Now, Rory, this is probably more aimed at you, because it's Nicholas Jackson's name has come up again. And he's now obviously the subject of interest from Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been having a little bit of a look. First season, 14 goals, 5 assists. Didn't take penalties in his first season. Second season, 10 goals and 5 assists. With injuries and obviously those suspensions at the end of the season have probably put an unfair reputation on his name.
Why is it unfair? He got 12% off.
No. What I'm saying is, because everyone's focusing on the red cars, they've forgotten about the actual player, is what I'm on about. Is he good enough to lead a team like Newcastle playing Champions League football? What's your honest assessment?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I don't rate him. I don't rate him highly at all. I think he can do a lot for the team. I think he's a kind of bloke that can kind of play with a good striker, play with a finisher, and potentially encourage that finisher to score goals. But what he will never be, he's one of the most profligate strikers I've ever seen. Like, he misses. He doesn't only miss chances, he misses sitters. Sitter after sitter he misses. So no, I don't think that he is the kind of player that Newcastle United should be building an attack round.
Do you know what I think about Nicholas Jackson? I do think that you raise a really good point. Maybe there is a little bit where he's underestimated, but I can't help but think back at that game against Spurs, where he was it 4-3 or 5-4, Chelsea won. Nicholas Jackson scored a hat-trick or 4 goals.
Yeah.
And it was almost a disappointment because he should have scored about 12.
Yes.
And so I can understand, but what I would say is that if there's any manager to go and play for and improve, it's Eddie Howe. I rate him so highly. And so I would say it'd be a great move for him. I think the context of replacing Alexander Isak, replacing Benjamin Sesko, who you wanted, Liam Delap, who they wanted, it would be disappointing.
There's a reason that Nicholas Jackson would be Newcastle's 7th choice centre forward.
Yeah.
And the reason is because he is a wasteful centre-forward. He can cost you massively. He gets himself sent off at crucial moments. He did his best to cost Chelsea at the Club World Cup. He did his best to cost Chelsea in the run-in for the top 4 race last season. And ultimately, if he's your number 9, there is a ceiling as to how far you can get in a season.
Well, I'm gonna bow to Rory's Chelsea knowledge there. He can have that one.
Yeah,
probably.
Also, the stats. You know how Luke presented this at the beginning with the stats. The stats will tell you something. But my God, watch him play.
That's the thing. I
don't
want to use stats, but sometimes when we talk about, especially strikers, you'd probably like to use it. And I'm thinking, if you look at someone's first season and they hit 14 goals and they get 5 assists and they don't take penalties, you're thinking, there might be a player in there. But judging by your knowledge, you seem that he's actually he's got worse.
There is a player in there, definitely. But let's move on to the next one, because we're going to be talking about Jackson for the rest of the window, aren't we?
Well, you talk about Nicholas Jackson and whether he's a striker. Let's move to someone else, and he's a topic of conversation every time we mention this player, Phil Foden. Now, I don't want to talk about Phil Foden because he's not linked, but Manchester City are linked with not one in Xavi Simons, but also Rodrigo. Now, where does that... what do you think about those transfers first? But where does that put Phil Foden? Because it looks like Omar Marmoush and Ryan Cherki could play the number 10. It looks like if they have on the right-hand side will be Phil Foden, but is that his best position? If you've got Doku on the left with Rodrigo, what is that?
I do worry about Foden.
Especially in a World Cup year.
Yeah.
What does that say about these transfers being linked? Does that say that...
I mean, Pep Guardiola has proven over the years that he's not going to ever be sentimental about it. And there is a chance that Phil Foden, as brilliant and masterful a footballer as he can be, is no longer part of his... Like, we've seen, to be full credit to Phil Foden, but we have seen Pep Guardiola get rid of far better players than Phil Foden. We've seen him do it to Samuel Eto'o. We've seen him do it to... Like, he will happily move players on. So I think that Phil Foden is an excellent player, but this is a bit of a make or break season for him, because off the back of the Euros that he had, which were pitiful, and he cost us, then off the back of the season that he just had, which was basically a non-starter for him, this very much is a season that he needs to seize with both hands.
I agree with that. I think it's a huge season for his career and sort of potentially the trajectory of his career. But what I would say is I do think that there were flashes of a rejuvenation in the Club World Cup. And you can allow players, then it's not always going to be this linear progress and improvement throughout their entire career. I certainly hope that this is the right season. But and maybe it's a kick up the backside, bringing in a Sivins, bringing in a Rodrigo, that extra sort of edge to go and compete.
So he gets in the team. But with players like that arriving, Cherki in the team, realistically, is Phil Foden, as things stand, almost on paper we're doing this, is Phil Foden in Manchester City's best 11 at the moment?
Well, that will probably depend on Bernardo Silva and where he plays, because Rodri's out until September, so Reinders and Nico will probably play in midfield. Xerxes Marmoush could play the 10, so he's got to have competition there.
Well, look, he's spoilt for choice, Pep Guardiola. And one thing I would say on the tight race is I do think that not enough people are talking about City. And I can understand why, but never write off Pep Guardiola. Before we break, Luke, give us one more.
Okay, one more. Let's go. Well, Everton. We've talked about Jack Grealish, but are they going to add a little bit more to their firepower? From the Championship, Fatawu from Leicester. So they obviously had their conversation with Tyler Diblin. Yeah. They don't want to be... They've been put off by the price because Fatawu could be another one. So you're looking at Everton with the likes of Iliman Ndiaye. You're looking at Grealish. You're looking at Fatawu. Are they... Dewsbury Hall as well. Yeah. Are they knocking on the door for a top 10 finish?
Top 10 finish? Yeah, I think top 10.
Well, there's only really... in my head, there's only one sort of space left for them. Is what I think.
I do think it's possible, and the player you're talking about at Leicester, obviously rivals with Forest, but they do produce some really good players at Leicester. And I know he didn't play a lot last season, but he looks to have something special about him. I think it would be a great move for him and a great move for Everton.
Yeah, it would be very good. And just very quickly, Rory, I know we was bringing him up, but Calvert-Lewin. Leeds, there you go. Leeds wanted him. That's the only reason I wanted to mention that, just for that reaction alone.
They want to go down.
I don't know. They want him or Rodrigo Muniz. So.
Well, you've got to sign Muniz, haven't you? You've just got to get Muniz. Because you're asking the wrong question if the answer is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, aren't you?
I think that's incredibly harsh. And I hope that Dominic Calvert-Lewin goes to Leeds.
Yeah, it keeps him up.
And proves Rory Jennings wrong. It certainly won't be the first time that Rory's been proven wrong. Right, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+, gambleaware.org. Next up, we're going to discuss if Newcastle should hold firm on Alexander Isak.
Hamilton, now at Ferrari, dares to dream of a record 8th F1 world title. The Tifosi will be hoping the Brits can bring glory back to Italy. To many, Ferrari and Formula One are inseparable. They're the only team in the sport today to have competed in the first World Championship in 1950, are the most successful team in history, and have built some absolutely gorgeous cars. Their first driver's title was won in 1952 by Alberto Ascari. Considered one of F1's most dominant and best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s, and the cars back then were beautiful, and they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. Le Professeur Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Raikkonen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So, 16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
Good evening, it's the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, and Rory Jennings. We're going to be turning our attention to Newcastle's stance on Alexander Isak. We can't not talk about it. It's the transfer saga of the summer. And we're going to be asking, and I want Newcastle fans to get in touch, should Newcastle play hardball and keep Alexander Isak at the club? He's under contract, he's their player. And should they have the stance of, he's not going anywhere without our express consent unless we are in the position we want to be? And we're going to be talking about that. But Rory, I've got to ask you, we've just heard in Uma's bulletin, I've been seeing it doing the rounds on social media. We've got Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank going to be gracing the old ballroom dance floor for Strictly. Is that going to make you, I don't imagine that being a show you are glued to week in, week out, but do you think you'll turn it on the telly and see a Chelsea legend dancing away?
Oh, Jimmy. Yeah, no, I certainly will, because my daughter loves it. My daughter, last year, she was obsessed. She was obsessed with Paul Merson. She calls him the cowboy. Apparently he did a dance. Paul Merson apparently did some dance dressed up as a cowboy. And my daughter Clementine just got so invested in it. She's voting and all that.
Yeah.
So this year she will be certainly encouraged to vote for Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. Genuinely one of the best strikers I've ever seen play. I think he was a truly, truly great centre-forward for Chelsea. Incredibly unlucky that his time, despite being brilliant and the link-up that he had with Ida Johnson, it was so good, but it was under Ranieri, and it was in a 4-year period where we didn't win any silverware. We won silverware before and after him, but he sort of missed it. But that partnership, Hasselbank and Johnson, was about as good a partnership as I think I've ever seen at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, look, he obviously was a great player, but I think it'll be good telly to watch a Premier League legends like that sort of put on his, his Samba suit or whatever, his
rule 17 years old.
Well, that was Simon Jordan rudely interrupting the show, but it is Simon Jordan, so we will listen to him because we're turning our attention to Alexander Isak, and it's still to be seen if Newcastle are going to stand firm on that situation. But Simon Jordan believes that they can do it if they really want to.
There might have been a horse trade in the middle of that discussion. Right, you're on £120,000 a week. As much as it burns my backside because you signed a 3-year contract, I'm going to up your money for this year, and you'll go next year. You can go next year, but you're staying this year, and that's the end of the discussion. So you can now whether people are prepared to be that bold, whether it's as simple as that, I think things are as difficult as people want to make them. If people realise that the power in the room is the club that owns your registration, and you've got the preparedness to stare it down and go, I do not care. I do not. This is bigger than you. This is not about your individual move to Liverpool. This is about what happens inside this football club. This is how big this football club is. Yeah. Messi didn't get what he wanted when everyone in the media was going. He's going for Barcelona. Everyone was camped outside his house, and he got told by Barcelona, "Do as you're told." And he went the following season when Barcelona were prepared to let him go. So there is an instance where players, even at the highest echelon, can be put in their place a little bit.
What do you make of the idea, Rory, that Simon suggested there, that even through gritted teeth, it might be wise for Newcastle to offer him more money in order to keep him at the club and say you can go next season? Do you think that's wise, or do you think that might be, almost rewarding really poor behaviour from the perspective of the club?
So from the club perspective, what I think is best for Newcastle United, I don't think this will happen. I don't think this is right for Alexander Isak. I think Alexander Isak, on some level, is right to try and force his way out of the club. But from Newcastle's perspective, they would be right to hold on to their asset. They would be right.
Even if it meant sort of caving in and paying him more money?
No, I don't think they necessarily need to do that. But
what if that is what it will take to stop him agitating and to help him reintegrate back into the squad? Because money talks.
I guess that if that's what would help as almost a smoothing of the ways, then maybe you give him some more money. I can't really say why I see that to be necessary in this situation, though. Alexander Isak has a contract. Newcastle United, what they could do is stand strong and just say, you are not leaving. No matter what, we are not selling you this summer.
Yeah.
So you will abide by your contract, and that is the end of it. In the way that Daniel Levy did it to Luka Modric. I remember when Chelsea were desperate to sign Luka Modric, it felt like he was coming to Stamford Bridge. Roman Abramovich was an open admirer as him. He was one of those players, Modric, that sort of redefined the Premier League. He was so good that suddenly you didn't need to be a towering presence in midfield. You could just be a tiny dictator of the tempo. And Chelsea were desperate for him. Daniel Levy said no, and regardless of what Modric did, he still said no. And the following season, they sold him. He was brilliant that season. They sold him the following season to Real Madrid, not to Chelsea. It was done on Tottenham's terms. It wasn't done on Luka Modric's terms. I think that Newcastle should do that from their perspective. They cannot be a serious club. They will never be the club that the PIF want them to be. They will never be this club that people up there believe them to be if they are a club that sell their best talent. The best and most serious football teams do not sell their best players, and they certainly do not sell their best players to Premier League rivals. So I believe that from Newcastle's perspective, the statement of saying to the world, absolutely not, you do not come shopping here, is almost worth forcing Alexander Isak to stay.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, I speak to Newcastle fans, our mate Ollie Klink, hosts on this show. I think that lots of Newcastle fans would like their club to make that statement. I think Newcastle fans get in touch. If it was at my club, I'd feel a little bit sour about paying him more, considering the fact that he's refused to be a part of the club. He's gone and been training at Real Sociedad.
Without the money. Surely he's signed a contract and agreed a rate. Surely you just enforce the existing rate and you say that you're going to stay. But just to point it out, from the opposite side of this conversation, I think from the Newcastle, if we look at this through the lens of Newcastle United and what's best for the furtherance of Newcastle United, they should force him to stay. But what is the best for Alexander Isak and the furtherance of his own career? I think Alexander Isak is absolutely correct to agitate for a move. I know it's not nice to see, but ultimately we have so many examples of players who have sat tight at football clubs and ultimately wasted their career. Harry Kane is an example of this. He didn't sign for that Man City team when, if he had tried really hard, if he didn't have his brother as his agent, he would have been the one winning a treble. He would have been the one potentially winning a Ballon d'Or. He would have been the one who was breaking all sorts of Premier League golden records. And instead of that, he hung about at Tottenham, scored a load of goals that absolutely counted for nothing. And history is not kind to him for doing that. History actually penalises him for demonstrating that loyalty. Of course, Alexander Isak wants to play for Liverpool. It's the most exciting sporting project in world football. So ultimately, Newcastle should try and keep him, force him to stay, make the statement that he states. But Alexander Isak should leave because he has a far better opportunity, and these opportunities don't come around often.
Do you expect another bid from Liverpool to come in? Because, of course, what we've been hearing, is that they're only going to... Liverpool don't want to get into a bidding war, and they're only going to put that bid in if they feel that there is some sort of openness at the club and willingness at the club to let him go. Do you expect Liverpool to put that bid in and push even more?
I mean, they're telling us that they're not going to do it. They're telling us that they are not going to bid again. So we have to believe them. We have to take them at their word. I expect them to potentially sound out Newcastle. Whether they put an official bid in will be determined by what they are hearing from the club. Is there a world of prizing him out of the clutches, for example? Because they'll know before they put the bid in.
Do you think Newcastle are in any way right and correct to feel that PIF, Public Investment Fund, are slightly letting the club down? Because it seems to me that since Staveley left, that sort of direction that you felt the club had, that spokesperson you felt the club had, doesn't really exist anymore.
No.
And Eddie Howe's having to fill in for that, and he's got enough to deal with on his plate.
Yeah, I mean, this issue, I think, went up to the PIF. I mean, I remember reading that this was going to be looked after solely by the chairman, Al Ramian. It wasn't going to be an Eddie Howe issue, and yet it seems to have become an Eddie Howe issue.
Certainly publicly.
Yeah. So I think that perhaps what we expected, what Newcastle United was supposed to be when this takeover happened, has not come to fruition. But part of the reason it hasn't come to fruition is because of PSR rules. PSR rules, by the way, that Newcastle United themselves voted for. So I don't think that they've been majorly hamstrung. I just think that ultimately they have a player that has outgrown them. This happens. Eden Hazard left Chelsea because he outgrew us. This happens. Cristiano Ronaldo ultimately left Manchester United because the allure of Real Madrid was too much. Alexander Isak is desperate to get out of Newcastle because he just won a League Cup and finished 5th in the league, and he's the best striker in the country. Of course he wants to be part of this sporting project. The champions of the country want to sign him. The champions of the country who have had an amazing window. It's an exciting project. So I don't think it's weird that Isak wants it, but I do also understand why Newcastle, almost for the statement more than the player, should block it.
Well, yeah, look, no doubt this is going to rumble on, I think, right until the very end of the window, and I can't help but feel there's more to come from this, that another bid will eventually go in, and I won't be surprised if Alexander Isak does indeed become a Liverpool player. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18 plus gambleaware.org. Next up, we're going to talk Nottingham Forest. Could they be getting closer, even closer, to Manchester City's James McAtee? Yes, the NFL returns to Wembley in October as the Los Angeles Rams take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and our competition to win VIP tickets is now open. That's right. We're giving you the chance to win 6 seats in a private box at Wembley Stadium with full hospitality plus $5,000 spending money. Here's how to enter. 18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland for a chance to win. Text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 338. All entries must be received by the 25th of August at 11 p.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. I get a bit nervous reading out those numbers. As soon as the telephone number, I feel like you're just one misread away from giving the wrong number.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You can't do it.
No, no.
That's the most nervous I get, I think.
You're a pro. You never get it wrong.
Oh, thank you, man. That's incredibly nice. I think sometimes people think we don't like each other. Do you know, because we have a good tete-a-tete.
We are, in fairness, we are always arguing.
But it's always in good spirit, I think.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that's the beauty of football, isn't it? It's opinion. It's passion. That's what you want. You want to sort of flex your analytical muscle and discuss it with your mates. That's what football is.
But I think we do it well without getting sort of, I don't know.
Yeah,
without arguing.
Occasionally, I lose my temper, but then we shake hands and we call it a 10-9 victory for you, and we move on.
Well, it's a bit like Brian Clough. We have a discussion, we talk about it for 20 minutes, and then we agree that I was right. Yeah. Right, talking about Nottingham Forest, we've got to talk about this. Of course, I'm a Forest fan and I want to talk about this, but this is big news because TalkSport understands that Forest have indeed stepped up their pursuit of Manchester City midfielder James McAtee after being confirmed, of course, in next season's Europa League. That no doubt is given the opportunity for Forest to flex their muscles in the transfer market a little bit more. Sources have described discussions between the two clubs as positive. McAtee keen on the move to the City ground. Forest willing to pay in excess of £20 million. I know what I think about this, Rory, but you are the beneficiary of a Manchester City academy talent in Cole Palmer. Slightly different players, but do you think no one would have expected Cole Palmer to sort of hit the ground running like he did at Chelsea? Do you think that there's any hope for Forest fans if we do get this over the line, that we've got a real special talent on our hands?
Yes, absolutely. Like James McAtee is a really good player. Really good player. He isn't good enough to play for Manchester City. He isn't going to cut it in the way that Pep Guardiola needs him to. He isn't going to sacrifice himself for the team. He isn't really a perfect player for Man City, but that doesn't mean he's not a perfect player for Nottingham Forest. It doesn't mean that he's not a perfect player for the Premier League, and it doesn't mean that he can't come back over the next half a decade and prove Pep Guardiola wrong in the way that Cole Palmer is massively doing so at the moment.
Well, I tell you what, I do wonder if there'll be some sort of buyback clause, because I'm sure that there are people at Manchester City that will look at what Cole Palmer's done and think, did we let him go through the net a little bit?
I mean, they did. They did. There's no two ways about it.
Now you can't look back.
No. They signed players like Jeremy Doku, and got rid of Cole Palmer. You think about imagine the partnership, Cole Palmer and Erling Haaland. Like, it's very difficult to make the point because Pep Guardiola is a genius, because he won 4 in a row, because he was a centurion, because he won a treble. It's very difficult to say he made a mistake. And sometimes it's very difficult to say he made a mistake because they may have still won the league.
Yeah.
But there is no doubt that allowing Cole Palmer to leave, when you think about what Manchester City were missing last year, was a mistake. And there is a chance that Nottingham Forest could really benefit from another mistake in allowing James McAtee to leave.
I think, it's one of those signings, I think, for Forest. It looked like we were going to have a Newcastle-esque summer. We just lost Anthony Elanga, blindsided by a Morgan Gibbs-White deal. Thank God Evangelos Marinakis did his work and managed to keep Morgan Gibbs-White. He's now the highest ever paid player in the club's history. It's ambition. You love to see it. I feel like someone like James McAtee not only is a ready-made replacement if Morgan Gibbs-White in a year's time, is granted that move elsewhere, but I just think it's one of those. We're playing Thursday, Sunday every week, Rory. It's going to be added pressure. Clubs know the sort of football they're going to be up against when they face Forest, and I can't help but think James McAtee. We talk about needle movers. We talk about players that I think have that pedigree to go and play for England. We're talking about a player that captained England's under-21s to a back-to-back Euros win. I know this was the summer of the Lionesses, it was the summer of the Club World Cup, but I think he really stepped up and showed the sort of mettle and sort of character he's got, and just giving Forest that extra edge and giving that strength in depth, I think, is going to be massive for us in a European season.
And do you know what else he brings? I think it's so important to sometimes have players in the team who know what it is to win. Like James McAtee's entire formative years has been in around the Manchester City winning machine. He won't be intimidated about how to get a victory away from home in Europe. He knows how to win silverware. He knows what it takes. He knows the mentality that's needed. And I think having players like that within your camp, particularly when the European campaign is going to be new for the club in the modern era.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Having somebody like James McAtee around to just bring that nous and that understanding, I think it's worth its weight in gold. I think it's a really intelligent signing.
Yeah, I agree. And look, there's been other talks around Forest. We spoke about it last week in terms of Omari Hutchinson, but since the last time we were on air, Rory, there's been talks, but understands that Forest are preparing a bid for Leif Davis as well.
A good player.
These are two players that were relegated last season, but equally showed that they're Premier League quality. Omari Hutchinson wasn't in the Ipswich squad at the weekend, when they, or on Friday rather, when they drew in that opening game with Birmingham. I get the feeling, and maybe this is just me, glass half full, optimistic before the start of the season, that Forest can kick on and have another great season, do well in Europe. Are those the sorts of players, if you get those over the line, where you're starting to think, yeah, Forest can repeat the success from last season?
Yeah, I think Forest are actually going to have a difficult time of it, but these signings are making me think that it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Leif Davis. Like I genuinely would have rather had Leif Davis playing for England last summer than Kieran Trippier playing at left back. Like having a right-sided left back who was terrified to use his left foot, terrified to pass forward, and would basically only lay the ball 5 yards backwards with his right foot, massively cost us. We didn't use the full pitch. So I think that Leif Davis would be a very good signing. I think he's a Premier League player. You know, sometimes you just know that somebody is capable of doing it in the Premier League. Doing it at Forest under Espirito Santo makes sense. And these are the sort of signings. You know, when you looked at Manchester United, where they needed to strengthen and the way that they needed to strengthen, Premier League proven footballers. They needed to score, that they needed to sign goal scorers that had done it in the Premier League. They went out and they signed goal scorers that had done it in the Premier League. I think what Nottingham Forest need is exactly what they're doing here. They aren't trying to be too clever. They aren't trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And they're signing players that will do a job for them.
The great thing about it is, as well, is all of those players that we're talking about, they're not coming in as first string. They're coming in to have to prove themselves and fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Which should raise the tide of the other players at the club.
Exactly. It raises standards, because in James McAtee's position, you've got Morgan Gibbs-White. In my mind, there's not many a better player in that position in the Premier League. At left back, you've got Nico Williams, who's been absolutely, most improved player for Forest, become instrumental for us going forward and defensively. And so in Omari Hutchinson, you've got Callum Hudson-Odoi. You've brought in highly rated Dan Ndoye from Bologna. So it feels like that, and you need that. You need that if you're going to continue in the vein Forest have. I'd love to get a prediction from you, Rory. I'm sure I'm not going to like it, but in terms of Forest League and European conquests next season, what is your expectation?
Europe's a slightly different thing, because I feel like English clubs in Europe will always have a foothold, will always be strong. And I don't say that necessarily with a lot of pride. I just think it's linked to the amount of eyeballs on the Premier League and the amount of money sloshing around the Premier League. English sides in Europe will do well, and Forest have pedigree in Europe. I can see you having a really positive European campaign. Domestically, I think you're going to struggle. I think it's going to be a difficult season. But these are the kind of signings that could well prove me wrong.
But okay, in a hypothetical world,
I think you'd be mid-table, lower mid-table. But I also think that I wouldn't be surprised to see you in a semi-final in Europe, and then after that, who knows?
Yeah, I'm hopeful, Rory. That my hope is 10th place finish European final.
Yeah, imagine. Also, it'd be you take that, obviously.
Yeah, of course I would.
Yeah. I mean, I genuinely believe that you're going to have a really good European campaign. I really do. Like, I do a lot of England aways, and Forest travel in such great numbers that you will, and you make such a racket at home as well. You're going to be successful in Europe.
And I think European nights under the lights at the City,
you're going to
banks
win
of
games.
the River Trent.
Oh,
look at me!
You're going to win games.
I think it's going to be a difficult place to go. But again, my perspective's changed just today because of that CAS ruling. You look at the sides we're going to be playing: Roma, Rangers, Feyenoord, Betis, Legia Warsaw.
You're better than all the teams you just said, though. You're actually better than all the teams you just said. And that's kind of coming back to the point that I made about the Premier League, which isn't always a good thing. But it's fantastic for you.
Better than Roma? I mean, Rangers at the minute, crikey Moses. But
Roma might give you a game. But yeah, I think that you...
But Ibrox is a difficult place to go.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And that would be positioned as a Battle of Britain thing. And when I talk about the Forest fans that travel well, I mean, they bring, 15,000, 20,000 down to Nottingham. So it'd be a wonderful occasion. But I'd see no...
But Forest bring 15, 20,000.
No, Rangers.
Oh, I was going to say.
Rangers
I
travel
thought that was a slide dig at RM support. I wasn't any of that.
No, sorry. I mean, I think you travel incredibly well.
Yeah.
But obviously Glasgow Rangers would as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I think that Nottingham Forest will have a really good season in Europe. My prediction is an excellent European campaign and a fairly underwhelming domestic campaign. So maybe our predictions here kind of chime with one another. Mid-table, you think? I think slightly lower than mid-table. But like I say, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see you in a semi-final of Europe.
Come on then, Nuno and the boys. I just cannot wait for that. European nights, under the lights, mist rolling in from the Trent.
Yeah.
Get it in my veins.
You win that day. Regardless of who the opposition are,
exactly.
You win that day. Yeah.
Right, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. 18 plus, gambleaware.org. We're going to bring you the biggest stories of the day next. This is Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, and Rory Jennings. So, could PSG's Gianluigi Donnarumma be on the move Our reporter Ben Jacobs will give us the latest on him. Jack Grealish is set to have his medical at Everton. We'll discuss see if that's a good move for him and for Everton heading into their brand spanking new stadium. Also coming up, we'll hear from Jay Motti about what he thinks Manchester United are going to do this season after an absolute belter of a summer for them. And Chelsea, Rory, surely you have to be excited for this season and their chances. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Right, let's start with Gianluigi Donnarumma. He's been left out. The PSG Super Cup team against Spurs live on talkSPORT this Wednesday night. And our reporter Ben Jacobs gave us the very latest on the Italian number one.
As of now, Chelsea sources are very much backing Robert Sanchez and distancing themselves from Donnarumma. I never say never with Chelsea. Even with João Pedro in May, they didn't want to bid because they thought, we're okay, we want a different kind of profile, we're going to get Liam Delap. And then once Newcastle sort of got going, a month later, they thought, hang on a minute, Nicholas Jackson might leave. Maybe we do need this player. So there's always that possibility of moving parts. But I think Manchester United are going to be one to watch in particular. Sources had always downplayed their talks with Donnarumma as well. But what I know at the moment is two things on Donnarumma. The first is that he's been excluded from the UEFA Super Cup squad against Spurs, which is a clear message from PSG. They want to sell now. And then the second point is that Donnarumma is open to a Premier League opportunity. And I think we'll have more in the next few days because there'll be a lot of speculation tonight. My understanding is that Donnarumma may even say something in the coming days, and then we'll have a clearer indication of what he's thinking. But Lucas Chevalier, new young goalkeeper at PSG, is the number one, which means if Donnarumma runs down his contract and leaves in a year's time, then he'll only be a number two. And knowing that, I think it will suit all parties for an exit now. So keep an eye broadly on Premier League clubs and Donnarumma because I think we're going to get some movement in the coming days.
talkSPORT's transfer reporter Ben Jacobs bringing us up to date on the latest on Gianluigi Donnarumma. Rory, before we get into sort of where he might end up, we've heard from Ben Jacobs there. I just am absolutely astounded that he's now surplus to requirements because a youngster with the surname of Chevalier is taking his spot. I think when I don't watch the French league, but in the Champions League, I thought he was absolutely world class, and all of a sudden he's surplus to requirements. It's mad at times, just the fleeting nature of football.
Why is that surprising though? How highly do you rate him?
I think he's a top goalkeeper. I think he's a world-class goalkeeper.
Yeah. I mean, I'm.
Is that controversial?
No, I'm inclined to agree with you as well. I love the idea of Chelsea signing him. I really do.
And you surely need one. Look, Sanchez, I think, improved in the Club World Cup, but you know, Donnarumma's a different level, surely.
Yeah, look, I think he's truly brilliant. But what I think you have to do in these situations, and I'm trying to see this from Paris Saint-Germain's perspective. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. I don't know the replacement goalkeeper. But perhaps what they're doing is moving a player on in order to, at one point when Chelsea brought Thibaut Courtois into the team, it didn't look like that was the right decision because it felt like we still had the best goalkeeper who was existing in the team. Cech was the best goalkeeper. We moved Cech on, and it was because Courtois was so good. I don't know if something similar is happening at Paris Saint-Germain. Maybe it is. But in terms of what Donnarumma is, in terms of what he can do, in terms of the keeper that he is and what he represents, if Chelsea signed Donnarumma, I think it actually puts us in title contention. That's how good I think he is. When you think of his wingspan, when you think he's like an albatross, isn't he? He's like a truly brilliant, domineering goalkeeper.
Yeah.
When you think about what Italy did to England at Wembley, it was Donnarumma. It really was.
And I can't help but think, for Chelsea anyway, he would provide you with, I think, that bit of nous and experience, which is what you lack at the minute. You've got a load of great, talented young players, and I agree that this is going to be a season where you separate yourselves from the sort of the Spurses and the Uniteds and the Villas and the Newcastles. I think you're next in that chasing pack behind Arsenal and City. Donnarumma gives you that edge, which you've been calling out for, to be fair, Rory. You've got these young players, but you need a bit of something else, don't you?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it really would be a top signing. And I think now that everybody in the Premier League who has an issue with their goalkeeper, and there's a lot, Manchester United are in a very similar situation. Chelsea are obviously in this situation. everybody is now going to be looking at Donnarumma's potential availability and thinking that this could be the ticket. This is the answer. So the fact that Donnarumma has come available, you'd have never predicted it. Like, you know, when it was, a couple of months ago, we watched Paris Saint-Germain win a European Cup final in Munich in the most devastating of ways. It was the most one-sided European final I think I've ever seen. It was a complete demolition job. Donnarumma was very much at the epicenter of that brilliant side, and suddenly he's available. There is a real potential coup available, and like I say, I'm looking at this through the lens of Chelsea Football Club. But if we were to bring in Donnarumma, I think it puts us in title contention.
Do you think, and we'll talk more with Jay Motti about United in a moment, but do you not think that it would be a great signing for United, who seem to have sort of stepped up? It feels like the club are sort of broadening their shoulders a little bit and flexing their muscles with the players they've brought in. And yes, they got a lot going forward in this transfer window, but it feels like, I think, the weakest spot is at the back, particularly in terms of the man between the sticks.
Oh, Max, absolutely. I think you could easily argue that despite Manchester United's brilliance in this window, signing Sesko is obviously a brilliant signing. Not only because he's a very good player, but because of the statement that it made. Manchester United, despite the embarrassment that happened last season, losing to Tottenham, finishing 15th, despite all that, they go out and they sign one of the most prodigious young players in world football. The eyes of the world were on Sesko. Manchester United signed him. So it made the statement. But I think you could easily argue that regardless of that signing, regardless of the Mbeumo signing, regardless of anything else that Manchester United have done this summer, if they were to bring in Donnarumma, that is the best possible signing that they could make, because the elevation, the levelling up from Andre Onana, who is a calamity, if we're completely frank about it. And I know people don't like it when I talk like that because of the emotional side of the game or whatever. But these are facts. Andre Onana is a complete disaster. It has been a complete disaster. It's probably the worst thing that Erik ten Hag ever did to Manchester United, is leave this trail of destruction that is embodied by Andre Onana. They will never be able to get anywhere. Whatever Manchester United are hoping for, it will not happen because of Onana. In the same way that whatever Chelsea are dreaming of, it probably won't happen because of Robert Sanchez. You sign Donnarumma and everything changes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think no doubt whoever it is that can get him, it's an absolute coup. And for me, you're getting a goalkeeper in their absolute prime. Now, a player that arguably, well, certainly hasn't been in their prime the last couple of seasons is Jack Grealish. Now, talkSPORT understands he's set to undergo a medical ahead of a completed move to Everton. The Toffees have agreed a deal with Manchester City to sign the winger on a season-long loan. Rory, what do you make of this? Because I know we've spoken previously and you've maybe felt a little bit underwhelmed about Jack Grealish heading to Everton. Do you still have that view?
Yeah, not in any slight or slanderous way towards Everton. It's just how highly I rate Jack Grealish. Like, I still think Jack Grealish is a remarkable footballer. He would still probably be in my England team. And I just think that he is a real talent that should be playing at the top level, which is Champions League football. So when Jack Grealish was going to be leaving Manchester City, I loved the idea of him potentially going to Naples to help Napoli retain the title in Serie A. I really like the idea of him potentially playing for a Champions League club, regardless of who it was. You could imagine him running the wing at Tottenham. You know, the Shelf side would love him because of their relationship with players like that, Bale, Ginola, whatever. Yeah. You could see him doing that. And obviously Newcastle. You could see him, like he would have been very much in keeping with the Newcastle Keegan era of entertainers. So I am surprised that he's gone to Everton, not because of the stature of Everton. They're a huge club, far bigger than Newcastle in terms of this conversation, but I just expected him to be playing maybe at a higher level. But for Everton, I think it's a glorious signing.
It's a great signing for Everton. And in the similar way you described the relationship he might have had with Tottenham fans and with Newcastle fans, I do think that he will endear himself and be endeared by the Everton fans, particularly as they're sort of riding the crest of this wave, going into their new stadium, etc. But I can't help but think that a Champions League club might have suited him better in order to force his way back into Thomas Tuchel's side, because certainly from a Forest fan's perspective, I certainly felt that maybe an implicit suggestion from Thomas Tuchel was that if you're not playing for a Champions League club, then you are second tier in my mind.
Which is a bit rich from him, considering that he picked Jordan Henderson and Ivan Toney and whatever else. I wouldn't listen too much to what he has to say about things like that.
But do you not think that playing for a Champions League football club would have bettered his chances of being on the plane?
And do you know what? Even if we remove England from this conversation with regards to Jack Grealish, I just think that he's a brilliant player.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good bloke. I love him. I think he's a glorious footballer. He plays football in the way that I like to see football played. He's an artist, isn't he? Expressive.
Yeah.
But I also think that even Jack Grealish of today, I know he didn't have a good season last year, but he's a brilliant player. And I think that he can still do a job for someone in the Champions League. But for Everton, this has got to be one of the most exciting signings that Everton have made since what? I don't know, James Rodriguez?
I think as well it's exciting times generally for Everton's midfield, because I know you don't necessarily sing his praises, Dewsbury Hall, but I think there is a really good player in there. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It doesn't pay me to say it. Leicester are rivals of Forest, but they do produce very good young players, and I do think that there is a quality player in there. There's still obviously lots of development to do, but for where Everton are at and having him in and around Jack Grealish, I just think there's a lot of talent in there. And what's your sort of expectation for Everton in terms of the league this season?
I think, and I say this in with praise, not in a sneery way, I think they will finish in the top half. Like, if I say that about Manchester United, it sounds like I'm being condescending. With Everton, I don't mean it. I mean, I believe they will finish in the top half, and I think that's a good season for them. New stadiums aren't always as easy as people think. The squad isn't particularly good. David Moyes hasn't been backed. I think he spoke recently about not necessarily seeing the incomings that he hoped for, but he'll be inspired by this. And it's an interesting one because I don't necessarily see Jack Grealish as a Moyes type signing, but if he can help Jack Grealish sort of find his love of football again in the way that he coaxed the best out of a player like McAtee, it'd be very interesting to see. And with Jack Grealish in the team, I think Everton could finish in the top half. But almost more importantly than that, what they might be able to do with a player like Jack Grealish is get that 1995 banner removed from the Kop. Celebrating Everton's last trophy win of 1995, the Paul Rideout win. That banner might have to come down. Jack Grealish could easily inspire Everton to, I think he's more likely to do that. Finish 11th in the league, but get to Wembley.
Yeah, one thing I do hope, we've seen the big boys sort of go and reassert themselves in the transfer market, buying top strikers. It seems like every top club now has a top striker. And I just wonder if the sort of the natural order of things in the league might change. One thing I do hope for next season, like we saw with Palace, like we saw with Newcastle, is clubs that don't usually win trophies go and win a domestic trophy. Of course, I hope that Forest are first up for that, but seeing Everton lift a trophy at Wembley, I think would be great for football, just as it was when we saw Palace, when we saw Newcastle. And of course, as you say, Rory, there is no doubt if that happens, Jack Grealish will be absolutely pivotal to that. And of course, we wish the best for him, and perhaps for him to be on that plane to America with Thomas Tuchel. Right, next up on Transfer Insiders, we're going to discuss Manchester United and This is the Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, and Rory Jennings with you. Now, we're going to turn our attention to Manchester United because fair play to them. A lot of pressure on Ineos, a lot of pressure on Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Dave Brailsford, Jason Wilcox to get the business done and give Ruben Amorim what he needs. And by Jove, as my nan used to say, have they done it? And Stretford Paddock's Jay Motti gave us his thoughts on United's transfer business.
They have put the money where the mouth is. I mean, Mercedes Cunha, you thought, okay, that felt like that deal was always going to get done, and it got done, announced on the opening day of the window. Bumo dragged on a little bit, but I felt quietly confident that was going to happen. The Sesko one, though, is the one that I think really shook everyone up because it was like we were linked with him, and then within a week he's a Manchester United player. And anyone that follows United know that doesn't happen. It usually gets dragged out for weeks, if not months. So that wants to get done rather quickly. It's great, but it has made us a little bit greedy because now there's talk of Carlos Baleba and everyone's going, well, you've gone in quite hard already. Are you going to go the whole hog and bring in a midfielder of that talent? So it's a double-edged sword. And you mentioned there about the pressure that's on Ruben Amorim. I think he was under pressure anyway. We just finished 15th, because Rory was mentioning earlier. We lost a final to Spurs, which is the lowest of the low. So he's going to be under pressure to perform this season. And I think bringing in the players we have done adds to that. But you're always going to be under pressure as Manchester United manager. And I think we've given him the tools that he needs. I just call me greedy, but I would just love it if we could get a midfielder over the line as well.
Stretford Paddock's Jay Motti giving us the latest there with a little slight dig at Spurs as well. That's as low as it gets, he says. I imagine you concur with him there, losing to Spurs in a European final?
Losing to Tottenham in a European final is completely unacceptable. I mean, that should have been sackable. Like, whether or not it's almost old news now, it doesn't matter. But I honestly believe that if Ruben Amorim had lost his job that night and sacked in the tunnel, I think that would have been totally fair enough. Manchester United, a great club, a great history, a great institution, cannot lose to Tottenham. All that. Lads, it's Tottenham. You know, Sir Alex Ferguson, lads, it's Tottenham. You cannot lose to Ange Postecoglou as well. Like, it was a bad night. Bad night at the office.
God love him, Ange Postecoglou. I wish all the best for him in the future. Now, let's get on to their transfer news, Rory, because did you expect United to be able to flex their muscles in the way that they have this summer? You know, because there is a part of me, I must admit, that's a little bit surprised, particularly the way that the Sesko deal went through, you know, almost so quickly and usurping Newcastle United. I don't want to go over that because we've been there and done that, but there has been an element of which I've been surprised at how good it's been. Are you surprised, or do you just think, no, this is who Man United are?
I think it's a really good window, and I think that these players are going to work, and I think that they're going to have a better season than a lot of people anticipated. The only thing that I would say to caveat this, we can both certainly remember times where Manchester United have looked like they've had a great window and it hasn't worked. Like, I remember the season when they signed Jadon Sancho. They pursued him, they spent loads of money on him, he was seen as the signing of the summer, it was a marquee signing, it was a statement signing, and they made big moves, and they brought him in, and this was the season. And it ultimately was underwhelming. When they brought Pogba back in. Remember, Pog back and all that. Alexis Sanchez, didn't they have Stormzy playing a piano at Old Trafford or some madness?
Or he was playing a piano.
Well, he was playing a piano for Stormzy, which is a really odd way round. But we've seen these moments before. Now, for the record, I don't think this is those moments. I feel like this is a new dawn. I feel like these are good players, and they're right for Manchester United now.
Yeah.
Premier League proven.
Apart from Sesko, but
two of the three. Yeah. Basically, you've got two guaranteed goal scorers in the Premier League. Then you've got a punt that could really work. You know, it's a good signing, and I think Manchester United have done what they should do, really, because they've thrown their might around, haven't they?
We heard Jay there just saying that he sort of is hopeful of European football in some guys. So I mean, that could be top 7. We've heard our chief football correspondent Alex Crook, and I don't know if it was expect or desires, but he was talking about top 5. Where's your prediction lie at for United heading into the new season?
Look, if they say they were to sign Carlos Baleba, I feel like they could then compete for the Champions League spots. If Ruben Amorim gets it right, I feel like the utensils are there, the infrastructure.
All's totally in his court now.
Yeah, the infrastructure's there.
Anymore.
As a club, as an institution, it's ready to compete.
Yeah.
And obviously on the pitch, it feels like the personnel are there. So then it's up to Ruben Amorim. But without Carlos Baleba, that midfield just looks disjointed to me. It doesn't look right. Andre Onana is a major problem. So I feel like, look, they've only got to worry about 38 games, which is a disaster for Manchester United in one way.
It's a blessing in disguise.
It's a blessing in one way.
For the Amorim rebuild. Now, one sort of concern I guess I've got, because again, I'm certainly no Manchester United fan, but I love the rich tradition they have of bringing young players through, particularly young English players. I mean, Neville, Beckham, the lot, Rooney. But, well, Rooney came for Everton, but he certainly developed incredibly well at Manchester United. And I look at Kobbie Mainoo, who seems to not necessarily be Ruben Amorim's sort of favourite there, who at times seems a little bit surplus to requirements. There's questions about whether he fits into Amorim's system. I just think you've got such a terrific talent there, young English talent, who I think performed admirably for England when he came in as an 18-year-old. And yes, there's been a few injuries, and yes, there's been sort of questions over his form. I think it would be a sad day if it didn't work out at Manchester United and he went elsewhere. I feel like it's incumbent upon Manchester United to make that work because he's one of their own and he's such a brilliant talent.
What's your concern? Do you think that the system doesn't necessarily suit him?
I think Ruben Amorim seems to be still asking for a midfielder with legs, a midfielder that can be box to box, and maybe that's not Kobbie Mainoo's sort of profile at the minute. But I just think he's so good that Amorim needs to find a way.
Yeah, I think that it will happen. I think that Kobbie Mainoo will feature for Manchester United. Where he fits into this system, I think it's going to be something that develops. The only thing that we can say, I mean, we've been very glowing about Manchester United. The thing that we also have to acknowledge, though, a big part of a transfer window is the revolving door, right? Getting rid of the right players. The five, they had what they call them, the bomb squad or something like that. Only Marcus Rashford has gone on.
I know.
So there's four still there, including Alejandro Garnacho, including Jadon Sancho.
Well, and the link with Garnacho is to your beloved Chelsea.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
you don't strike me. I mean, you've been really pleased with the likes of Liam Delap and what Esteval looks like a great young talent. Of course, João Pedro, but he doesn't really get your bell ringing, does he?
No, because he's a terrible, terrible person to have around the camp. He's a distraction. He is disrespectful. He isn't the consummate professional. I mean, I think he kind of sees himself as Cristiano Ronaldo, but with all of the arrogance and none of the talent. With all of the arrogance and none of the diligent hard work.
There is clearly talent.
Not the talent that he thinks is there. He's a very good player, and he could potentially become an even better player. But at the moment, it's all untapped. It's all potential. Like what he is,
or it's glimpses.
It's glimpses.
We've seen glimpses.
Yeah, and ultimately, look, he could go on to become a really good player. One day, the potential could be realised, and maybe he'll be running down the wing at the Bernabeu. But the geezer, if he carries on, he might find himself running down the wing at Cadiz, Iber, like Valladolid. Like, he might not necessarily make it. So I don't want Alejandro Garnacho anywhere near Chelsea. And 99% of the reason I don't want him near Chelsea is because of the man, not the footballer.
Well, despite that pessimistic outlook on the potential of Garnacho, who, by the way, it seems to me looks like it's a foregone conclusion to Chelsea, you have had a great summer. You've won the Club World Cup. You've shown yourselves to develop really well under Maresca. Cole Palmer, João Pedro scored in every single game he's played for you. You've got to be hopeful for next season. What is it exactly that you expect? Because I've heard you speak... Title challenge.
Simple as that.
Till when? Because the words out of your mouth is that it's a foregone conclusion. Liverpool are winning this title.
Yeah.
So how long do you hang on for?
I think that we just need to be in the conversation. I think that we need to be at the top.
Well, you were in the conversation till about November last year, and then it went Pete Tong. So it has to be a sustained title challenge, doesn't it?
It has to be. It has to be until Liverpool do something truly great to shake us off. If Liverpool win the first 12 games of the season, then it might only last 12 games because we can't do that. I don't think we're going to go on a run like that. But what we need to do is we need to be the team that's waiting if it goes a little bit wrong for Arsenal and a little bit wrong for Liverpool. If you win the league, and I think this Chelsea team can accrue 84 points, which I don't think will win the league. But if 84 does win a league, it needs to be Chelsea.
We will see, and we cannot wait for the Premier League season to return, which will, of course, be live and exclusive on talkSPORT Friday night. Rory, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, mate.
An honour, sir. Thank you for having me.
Don't forget, you can get the Transfer Insiders podcast on the talkSPORT app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Up next, it is the Sports Bar with Jason Cundy and Jermaine Pennant. Get your calls in 03717 223344.